Streets in the drive-thru again.
Oh, hey, Kirk. What can I get you today?
I want a solid bench of 4 chicken fingers that are real difference makers. Sprinkle cut fries with dynamic ridge patterns. Texas toast and cane sauce with an air of smugness that comes from knowing you're the best. Now back to you, Todd.
So the usual.
Make Raising Cane's part of your game day lineup. One love.
Live from TKDS Sports Studios, sports news, sports events, and more. This is TKDS Live. And now, to the TKDS Studios and your host, Jackson and Matt, for the Sports Now Update Show.
Rise and shine, it is football time. Hello, high school football fans. Week 9 is officially in the books. I'm Jackson Lightcap alongside Jonathan Snyder and Matthew Pennington as we welcome you to our Week 9 Friday night recap show. Happy Saturday morning. The weekend is finally here. The birds are chirping outside. The sun is shining, although it might not be for too much longer. But guys, it's a beautiful Saturday morning, and we got the next 3 hours to talk about high school football here in Southwest and Central Ohio. And guys, let me just tell you, I know that you guys have done your prep for this show as well. I know that you guys have looked at the Joe Idle playoff points. I know you guys have looked at all the conferences. But for those of you out there who have not been able to see any of that, out of the 4 years that we've done this show, and out of probably the 6 or 7 years at least I've covered high school football, this is probably the closest race for multiple conferences, for multiple regions, and it's going to be a fun couple of hours to talk about it all.
Yeah, and it also helps with the fact that there's 12 teams for the playoffs this year as opposed to 16 like we've had in the past couple seasons, but that definitely makes, especially when it comes to the playoffs and when it comes to teams making the playoffs, that makes that conversation a lot more interesting and a lot more spicy when we get down to this week 10. But yeah, there's a lot of games and a lot of things going on in week 10 that we're going to be having to talk about, because a lot of conferences on the line, a lot of playoff hopes, and a lot of playoff chances for teams on the line. It's safe to say this Week 10, like you said, Jackson, I feel like this Week 10 has a little bit more weight than it has had in years past when we get to this point of the season for high school football in the state of Ohio.
Was just going to bring that up. I mean, like you mentioned, there's so much going on in a lot of different conferences and a lot of different regions. We'll obviously talk Region 2. That turned into complete chaos and turned on its head this past week. We'll get into that a little later, but for sure, there's so much going on with almost every single conference you can think of. Some conferences got decided this week. Some conferences, again, got turned on their head this week. So, it is this past week, there's even more chaos to go with your chaos, it feels like, for this year, because there was a lot of questions surrounding playoff pictures this week. There was even like, and I use Region 2 as an example just because it's the most prominent one, but we had mentioned like Fairmont, and Centerville. We had mentioned, and how those were going to go. We had a lot of questions about teams that still had significant games to play and how that would affect playoffs. And now we've got those answers, and apparently we have, and apparently those answers are not the ones that I think anybody, well, I shouldn't say anybody expected, but those answers have turned the region almost upside down in the span of 1 week. So really a lot to discuss, and a lot to sink our teeth into this week for sure.
Yeah, and last night there were a couple of upsets that were going on that happened in the area that actually hindered some of the other teams from fighting for a conference championship this week. So we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. Again, the playoff picture. We saw a lot of teams clinch their playoff spot last night. We saw a lot of teams fall out of the spot with 1 week to go. We saw a lot of teams who were mathematically eliminated last night. And we also saw some teams that were on the outside looking in that were able to get an upset win to put them in the playoff spot, with them not quite controlling their destiny, but pretty much as close as you can to it. So there's a lot to go on within this show. And guys, we've talked about it, and we've seen this coming all year long, is with how the out-of-conference games win. There were a lot of teams this year that surprised us, either in a good way or a bad way. A lot of teams that came at firing out of the gates that started off 7-1, 6-2, those sort of teams heading into last night's game. I mean, a couple of teams for me that come to mind is look at Worthington-Kilbourne. Look at Goshen and the Warriors. They put together a nice season as well. So it's going to be an exciting couple of hours to talk about it all, because we knew that this season was going to have the most implications with the 12-team playoff that we've seen in recent memory. And boy, were we not wrong, because it's going to be a fun couple of hours again. Some housekeeping notes before we get into it. If anybody out there watches this show regularly, well, thank you for that, number one. But number two, flashback to last week. I was here at Central State University getting ready to call their homecoming game against Morehouse. Great game, by the way. Great atmosphere. Probably the best game I think I've ever been a part of. It was amazing. Just the crowd, the atmosphere, the tailgates. It was a true college football environment, and it was awesome. I did the show from outside where we would have been broadcasting, and the sun was blinding me. Well, today I'm back at Central State. I'm not calling the game today. Kyle Funk, another play-by-play guy for the TKDS Sports Network, will be calling that game at 2. I'm here to help with setup. I got myself a nice little office space today, so I'm not going to be blinded. But with that being said, Central State will be kicking off against Kentucky Christian at 2 o'clock. Kyle Funk will have the call alongside former NFL linebacker Curtis Grant and former defensive backs coach Corey Owens right here at Central State University. I'll have the call for the Wittenberg football game kicking off today at 4. They host Denison, a tough rivalry game, and the Tigers certainly in need for one. I'll have the call alongside Cheyenne Beto for that one. Jimmie Bell's Buckeye Show returns today right before the Buckeyes kick off. Make sure to tune into that on the TKDS Sports Network. So Saturdays, again, always busy for the network. This Saturday, no different. But, guys, we got a lot to talk about in college football, or not college football, high school football today. So let's get right into it. First off, as always, let's talk about our weeknight games. We had a Wednesday night game. It's not typical that we see a Wednesday night game, but we saw Schroeder blanking Stivers 40-0. That game played at Welcome Stadium. And then on Thursday, Columbus East beating Ponents 43-16. Meadowdale beating Belmont 36-6. Now, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later on when we get the DPS, but Meadowdale and Dunbar go at it next week. That should be for a DPS title.
And yeah, it feels like it's not every single year that it comes down to this matchup, but it feels like it's almost every single year that Meadowdale, Dunbar, wherever that game is throughout whatever point it is in the regular season, that game decides who's going to be on top of the DPS. So no real surprise, in my opinion, that once again, we're looking like we're about to see a Meadowdale versus Dunbar DPS title game. Like I said, it doesn't always happen in Week 10. It's not always a Week 10 game, but it's the game that pretty much decides the conference standings when it comes to the top two spots. So not too surprising that it's once again on the slate for the DPS this year.
Yeah, can't say I'm all that surprised either. Normally, at least since I've been on the show, normally it's been about and Dunbar at the top, Meadowdale kind of chasing them. But this time we got, like you said, Ed, it's not normally that we see it in the final week of the season, that it's a conference championship game essentially, but still the main two players in the DPS conference conference playing once again. So, what I will say is that Meadowdale, throughout their conference play at least has looked like the more complete squad. Taking a look at the Belmont game, Dunbar winning that one 26-20 in the middle of their season. This most recent one, 36-6 for Meadowdale. So, pretty important thing to keep in mind. Of course, that's just a paper stat at this point, but still, something to keep in mind for that DPS conference.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to see from this one, I mean, Meadowdale, John, you mentioned it, 138 points scored in conference and only 12 points allowed. Keep in mind, that's just through 3 games. So, as always, I'll let Matt do the math on that one. So, but Meadowdale and the Lions this season have been dominant. They got an out-of-conference win against Troy Christian, blanking them back in week 2. This is a team that stacked their schedule so many different times this season. They're looking to win back-to-back DPS titles, and you guys are right. Typically, this is the game that decides the DPS. Now, you go back a couple years ago, we know Ponents was in the mix on that, but really the last 3 years, they've been down more towards the bottom of the pack as well. So Meadowdale and Dunbar, it seemed like for a while Dunbar had their number, and Dunbar was winning the DPS left and right, year in, year out. Last year, Meadowdale snapped that. Can they get back to that? Does that momentum carry in to this upcoming week when they play again? So that's going to be interesting to see. And again, DPS, that's one of those conferences that, yes, even if you win your conference with the 16-team playoff, it wasn't a guarantee that you would make the playoffs because you play a weaker schedule within that DPS. So this very well could be the final game of the season for both of these schools. In fact, I think it is the last game of the season for both these schools. I don't think either of these guys are going to be heading into the OHSA playoffs now with the 12-team format. So expect a lot to be laid out on the line, especially for a conference title game. That game is going to be a fun one to watch at Welcome Stadium next Friday, kickoff at 7 p.m. Guys, let's go in and let's talk about the MAC real quick. In the Midwest Athletic Conference, we saw Marion local blanking Minster 42-0. Anna just able to edge Fort Recovery 28-24. Coldwater over Versailles 44-14. St. Henry beating New Bremen 20-0. St. John's against Parkway. St. John's winning that one 48-13. Guys, Marion local and Coldwater next week. This is the game that it seems like everybody who's a high school football fan, not just in Ohio but across the entire nation, have had this circled. Keep in mind, Marion local has had a couple of close games. They barely beat Versailles. They barely beat Anna. But the winning streak is kept alive, and that's what the Flyers have been known. That's what they do best, finding ways to win. Great teams will find ways to win. And but Marion local and Coldwater, that's a rivalry game. Coldwater has played them well in the past, and I want to say on a quote-unquote down here, even though they're 9-0. Marion local, with those couple of scares this season, there's a lot of people out there saying this streak will come to a close next Friday. Now, I don't believe it. I can't go against Marion local until they prove me otherwise, or until another team proves me otherwise, but I will go ahead and say this. I'm going to stand on what I said back in week 3. Although I think Marion local wins, if there is a team to knock off Marion local this season, it's this Coldwater team this week.
And yeah, I remember back in week 3, I was talking about Minster possibly being a team that could do it. But Minster's had a pretty off year compared to what we've seen from the Wildcats in years past. But here's another thing you got to think about when it comes to this game. Talk about how good Marion local and Coldwater play each other every single year. This isn't a conference championship game between Coldwater and Marion local. If Marion local loses this game, St. Henry splits the conference as long as St. Henry takes down Versailles next week as well. So Marion local with a loss to Coldwater and a St. Henry win, that's St. Henry and Marion local splitting the MAC title when it comes to the regular season. So Marion local, obviously they got a huge win streak to keep alive, and they've got a winning streak versus Coldwater in their last game of the season to keep alive. But if Marion local drops this game next week, the massive losing streak that I believe is now top 10 in high school football history in the country, not only will that end up being snapped, but they won't be sole winners of the MAC conference if St. Henry wins next week as well, which with the way St. Henry's been playing this year, their game against Versailles is a very winnable game. So Marion local with the win, they are the outright champions of the MAC next week. But if they lose, St. Henry with the win will split the title with the Flyers.
Yeah, and again, like you mentioned, it's a great point you bring up because St. Henry has had a great year here, and it's unfortunately just with the nature of the Marion local win streak and the nature of the rivalry between Marion local and Coldwater. I do feel like St. Henry's just kind of gotten lost in the shuffle a bit, but they're still definitely at play. Hey, and St. Henry's had a fantastic year, so give them credit where it is due. But back to the Marion local thing, I guess supposedly proving my point here. But Marion local and Coldwater, for as much as we taught Marion local has had, which granted, a Marion local off year is considered probably one of the best seasons in school history by any other program standards. But considering some of the close losses that they've had to Versailles and to Anna, another thing to mention is I think Coldwater has also kind of not been at the standard that they would want to be at as well. They're currently sitting at 3 losses right now from what I see. So something to keep in mind from both of these programs. So, I mean, I agree with Jackson. Just I go Marion local until they prove me otherwise. But that's something also to keep in mind in that matchup is just that Coldwater isn't necessarily the quite the same powerhouse that they were. I still think they're a very talented team, and plus this is a rivalry. Typically with rivalry games, you kind of throw the record out a little bit because they always tend to be a little closer. But this one in particular, I mean, maybe throw the records out, and I also do think Coldwater has not exactly been the team that they would expect themselves to be. Maybe 1 loss less than I think would be their standard, maybe even 2 losses less.
Let's go on to the Ohio Heritage Conference. Cedarville over Catholic Central in a thriller, 36-28. Greenview beats Greenon 28-12. Madison Plains Northeastern over Mechanicsburg 52-26. Fairbanks beating Triad 64-12, and West Jefferson able to get a win over West Liberty Salem 20-7. That's a big win for West Jefferson. That drops now West Liberty Salem to 5-4 on the season. I forgot to score. Madison Plains beating Southeastern 28-27. In the Ohio Heritage Conference, really not much to talk about. Every one of the main headlines that we've already talked about for that conference is kind of still coming to fruition. Northeastern, West Jefferson, and Mechanicsburg, all 3-1 in that North Division. Mechanicsburg has West Liberty Salem, West Jefferson has Fairbanks, Northeastern has Triad. Those are the 3 bottom teams in that division. In the South Division, Greenview getting that win over Greenon last night. That puts them at least a share in the South Division, and a win next week, they can claim it outright.
And yeah, it was the only, I would say, craziness that happened last night for the OHC would be Northwestern's win, and not even just a win, a beatdown on Mechanicsburg. The game last week between Mechanicsburg and West Jefferson going into that game was undefeated on the season. Mechanicsburg only had a loss to Urbana by 4, which that's a pretty good loss if you're Mechanicsburg when it comes to the division split, when it comes to where Urbana is in their division and what division they're in at Mechanicsburg. But a big loss last night to Northeastern. Don't get me wrong, Northeastern has had a phenomenal season so far this year. Their only loss on the season was an overtime loss to West Jefferson on the road. So the Jets have put together a very good season themselves, but it's that merry-go-round of one-loss conference teams in that North Division. You've got Northeastern that beat Mechanicsburg beat West Jefferson, and West Jefferson beat Northeastern. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I am wholeheartedly believing that by the time we're talking about this next week, we're going to see 3 different teams, all 4-1 in conference, and all sitting tied when it comes to their conference records inside of the North Division.
Yeah, and I'll take the South Division. Greenview for as much as I had talked about them earlier, a 3-loss team at that point in the middle of the season. I remember talking about my surprise at Isaac Greenview's season at that point. Turns out Greenview decided it was going to, well, I shouldn't say decided. It turns out Greenview had found a corner earned it on late in the year. You're 4-0 inside the South Division and beating Greenon. So pretty much unless we see chaos in their game against Catholic Central, but Greenview is in the driver's seat for that South Division at 4-0. Greenon now 3-1 in that division. So, really, really an excellent job by the Rams. Like I said, I remember talking about them. I was a bit surprised at their record in the middle point of the year after the Mechanicsburg loss. They were 2-3 at that point. With two in conference losses, but those were in the other division. Then they go and face their South Division opponents, and they rattle off 4 straight 8 wins, and slowly getting a bigger and bigger gap in all of those wins. 19-14 against Cedarville, 21-8 against Madison Plains, and now a 32-0 shutout against Southeastern, and this Greening game as well. For a pretty solid win in a multiple score game. So credit to the Rams for really finding a way to turn it around this year. So give credit where it's due.
It's time for our first break of the day and of the morning. We're going to take a small break. After these words from our local sponsors, we'll come back. We'll talk about the WOAC, the CBC, and the TRC. That's all coming up next here on the Friday Night Recap Show, powered by TKDS Sports.
Looking for future leaders we can believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Ohio. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It includes learning to listen, accepting responsibility, being a good role model, and it's about respect. The result, it transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. This message presented by the Ohio High School Athletic Association and the Ohio Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
I'm Kirk Herbstreit, and today I'm eating Raising Cane's.
Herb Street's in the drive-thru again.
Oh, hey, Kirk. What can I get you today?
I want a solid bench of 4 chicken fingers that are real difference makers. Crinkle cut fries with dynamic ridge patterns, Texas toast, and cane sauce with an air of smugness that comes from knowing you're the best. Now back to you, Todd.
So the usual.
Make Raising Cane's part of your game day lineup. One love.
Central State University is home.
Yeah, it's my time. Who I'm gonna be when I'm in the limelight? Shining in the dark like I was a nightlight. It's my time, yeah. I went from the back to front, last to one. Future looking like magnanimous. We on the way, no doubt. We on the way, no doubt.
For God.
For Central.
For State.
When life gets messy, make it sweet. Only Dirty Dough delivers maximum flavor from the inside-out layers, mix-ins, and gooey fillings. No filters, no fuss, just real cookies for real life. Every week, a rotating lineup of handcrafted flavors. Join the loyalty program, earn points on every purchase, redeem for free cookies, and get a cookie on your birthday. Dirty Dough, it's what's inside that counts.
Live from TKDS Sports Studios, sports news. And now, to the TKDS Studios and your host, Jackson and Matt for the Sports Now Update Show.
Back here on the TKDS Sports Network, Jackson Lightcap, Matthew Pennington, Jonathan Snyder, the Friday Night Recap Show. Thanks for joining us. Let's get back into some action in the Western Ohio Athletic Conference. Tri-Village over Preble Shawnee, 40-7. Hold that thought. We're going to talk about that game here in just a couple of minutes after I read off the rest of the scores. Insonia beating Arcanum 38-8. National Trail blanking Bradford 55-0. Tri-County North just getting a slight victory over Mississinawa Valley. That'll effectively end Mississinawa Valley's postseason hopes. They win that one 27-20. Twin Valley South over Dixie 25-7. Guys, couple games I want to talk about here. First off and foremost, Tri-Village over Preble Shawnee. That was for the WOAC championship, and Tri-Village just put a whooping on Preble Shawnee. If you look back over the last couple of years, the WOAC conference has come down to this game. Preble Shawnee has gotten the better of Tri-Village the past couple of years. this is a better Preble Shawnee team statistically than what it's been the last few years. That just goes to show you the jump that Tri-Village has made over the past couple of years. This team's incredible. This is going to be a team that's going to make a deep postseason run. They proved that last night. And then also talking about Ansonia and Arcanum. Ansonia, that's a team now that is on the inside. That I believe they clinched last night a playoff spot. Arcanum, they were teeter-tottering. So it's going to be interesting to see when we talk playoff points in Region 20 to see where the Trojans end up.
And yeah, when it comes down to the conference as a whole, that game, obviously, both teams going into the Preble Shawnee and Tri-Village game were 8-0 on the season, both 7-0 in conference. So now Tri-Village holds that 8-0 spot. Preble Shawnee drops down to 7-1 in conference. And with Ansonia winning last night as well, that puts Ansonia and Arcanum both at 6-2 in conference. So both of those two teams are eliminated entirely from being WOAC champions this year. Arcanum does play Tri-Village, I believe, for the final week of the season. They do, and that game is at Tri-Village. So as long as Tri-Village comes away with a win next week, because they've got the tougher of the two games, Preble Shawnee has National Trail next week. If Tri-Village comes away victorious, they're obviously the sole winners of the WOAC. There's no disputing it. They'll be undefeated on the regular season, undefeated in conference. Nobody beat them. They're the outright champions of the WOAC. But they have the tougher matchup between them and the Arrows of Preble Shawnee. So it's not all 100% set in stone for who's going to be the WOAC champion, because we've seen crazy things happen in this conference. I think a couple years ago we saw a three-way tie between Ansonia, Tri-Village, and Preble Shawnee, and it was the same merry-go-round that we're seeing inside of the North Division of the OHC right now, where one team beat the other. The team that lost to the first team beat the third team, and the third team beat the first team. So we've seen a lot of chaos happen inside of the WOAC. It's possible that we could see some chaos next week in the Tri-Village Arcanum game. I don't see it happening with how good Tri-Village has been, but there's still an opportunity for there to be a split between the two teams on top of the WOAC, being Preble Shawnee and Tri-Village. But like you said, Jackson, with how big the jump has been for Tri-Village, I see that I see that not happening with how good the Patriots have been this year.
Yeah, I don't see anything different happening there either. The Patriots have just been too good throughout the entirety of this year. The defense has been stifling some of the lesser opponents in the conference this year. And even some of even the games like Ansonia, they've been incredible to see them play, especially holding Preble Shawnee, team that has gotten over 340 points on the year heading into that matchup, holding them to only 7 points. They're by far their worst offensive output of the year. So that Tri-Village defense really showed us something different this past week, and something to really keep an eye on as they make their playoff run.
You know, one thing I want to talk about is at Arcanum. I looked at it, Region 20, according to Joe Idle's playoff point site. They're right now as the number 9 seed. So they control their own destiny. But if they lose poorly next week to the dominant Tri-Village team, I'm looking at a couple of the teams that are on the outside looking in that have a chance to get in. Waynesville, they go up against Valley View next week, and this is a Spartans team that has not had a great season, but they've started to find their footing over the last couple of weeks. This is a team that has played Valley View well in the past, so it'll be interesting to see. And then the number 14 seed, 2 spots on the outside looking in, Versailles, even after their great start, they hit a brick wall when they hit some conference play. They have St. Henry next week, but I still feel like that's a winnable game for Versailles. If Arcanum loses and everything else kind of stays status quo, and one of those teams is able to pull the upset, depending on how bad Arcanum loses, Arcanum may fall out of a playoff spot. So Arcanum and the Trojans still playing for a lot next week on the road against Tri-Village. We'll have it here live on the TKDS Sports Network. In the Central Buckeye Conference, Bell Fountain beating Urbana 23-16. A huge win for Bell Fountain. Indian Lake over Graham 24-21. Jonathan Alder over Kenton Ridge 35-33. North Union beating Springfield Shawnee 48-14. Ben Logan blanking Northwestern 48-0. And London shutting out Tecumseh on the road 37-0. Guys, this is a Kenton Ridge team that's lost multiple games now in a row. Their playoff chances are sliding, and they have another tough one next week as well.
And yeah, not too realistically. Once again, I mean, we talk about London and how good they've been. Talk about the playoffs when it comes to a lot of these teams. I mean, it's one thing we talk about a lot when it comes to the Central Buckeye Conference and how tough the conference is as a whole. There's a lot of opportunity for teams when it comes to their overall record and how good they've been throughout the season. Kenton Ridge 5-4 overall. They've got London next week, so more than likely going to be a loss in that game. They're currently the 12th seed. I mean, it's something we see a lot inside of the Central Buckeye Conference, unless you're London. London's pretty much a lock for the playoffs, it feels like, every single season, and there's no question about whether or not London's going to make the playoffs. But we'll see teams, and we've seen it. We saw it with Northwestern last year. We could see it with them again this year. A team that puts together their overall record is not bad. They're 5-5 or 6-4 on the season. They've looked good throughout the season. Kenton Ridge is in that conversation right now, 5-4 overall, but they sit as the 12th seed, controlling their own destiny with a game against London as their final game of the regular season. So it's very possible we see Kenton Ridge not make it in. So it's another year, kind of similar story when it comes to the Central Buckeye Conference. You've got teams that have put together good years, teams that their overall records are not bad, they've looked good, but we might not see them make the playoffs because of the conference and how many points they're able to get against certain teams in this conference. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially with the fact that Kenton Ridge has to deal with London in their final game of the regular season, and if teams like New Richmond, who are on the outside looking in, Oakwood's on the outside looking in, Urbana, another Central Buckeye Conference team on the outside looking in. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Kenton Ridge next week because, like I said, they're one of the few teams inside of their region that control their own destiny. But I think they're going to need a lot of help if they're going to be able to take down London next week. If they take down London, that pretty much locks them in to the playoffs. But we're talking about London.
And not only will that lock them into the playoffs, that should lock them into about a 9 seed as well.
Yeah, if we talk about Joe Idle and how good he is with all these points and everything. If they win, the minimum points they'll end up being at is 13.6, which puts them ahead of Fenwick and Taylor, ahead of them, who are both currently ahead of them, even if Fenwick and Taylor get the best wins possible for themselves next week. So if Kenton Ridge wins next week, they're guaranteed the 10 seed, no worse than the 10 seed if they win next week.
Yeah, and this point system obviously lending itself to wins. And I like that, don't get me wrong, but I want to qualify that when I say this. This season has been a season of how much can Kenton Ridge take? Take a look at their losses for me. Let me rattle them off. 28-27 loss to Graham, where they had scored what would have been the game-tying touchdown if they hadn't missed the extra point. Bell Fountain, a game that they had until a go-ahead field goal late in the fourth put Bell Fountain on top over them. Urbana, a game that they had a 7-point lead going into the final corner and gave up 14 unanswered. Jonathan Alder, second best team in the conference, and now only losing by 2 to them. This Kenton Ridge, despite the record, has played great this year. And you think you can't help but think, like, if a bounce goes their way, if a kick goes through, if an extra point goes through in an overtime win, and we could be looking at a Kenton Ridge squad that all of a sudden is now locked into the playoffs rather than having questions surrounding whether or not they're in or out. So this has been a season of, I don't want to necessarily say a season of pain for them, but it has been just a brutal season. In terms of with the losses they've had, it has been brutal for Kenton Ridge. So give them credit where they're due in playing a lot of teams close, especially teams that we would consider, better on the talent scale at least. I'd say Jonathan Alder, a very talented program. They played them close, so give them credit.
Let's talk about the TRC real quick. Miami East beating Troy Christian 42-14. Covington over Milton Union 35-21. Northridge over Bethel 39-12. Not really much to talk about in that. Obviously, next week we will have Covington playing Lehman Catholic. That should be a battle for second as long as Miami East can beat Riverside. They will be clinching as your TRC outright champions. We already talked about the DPS, so let me fit in the Friday night DPS score. Dunbar over Thurgood Marshall 42-0. We're taking a small break. When we return, we're talking about the SWBL and the MVL. That's all coming up next here on the Friday Night Recap Show.
This game just got bigger. That's how we do it, fellas. And better.
The energy is contagious.
Because we're back.
It's still a party here on HBCU Go.
And this season, it's about the grit.
Unbelievable.
The glory.
This conference is anybody's to take.
And the clash of champions.
Every game is our championship game.
The 2025 HBCU Go football season is coming this fall. Only on HBCU Go.
In life, things aren't scripted.
If you're an athlete, we need people like you and translate those skills to officiating.
You can get a lot out of it. It happens in every town, in every game.
We never have a perfect game, but the rewards always outweigh the negativities.
Looking to elevate your brand with quality custom printing? Red Ball Specialty Printing in Springfield, Ohio. Family owned and dedicated to attention, quality, and service. We customize everything from shirts, drinkware, pens, awards, and more. Whether 50 pieces or 5,000, we deliver color crisp, branding brilliant. From promotional apparel to recognition awards, we're your one stop for impactful merchandise. Visit rbspdesignschipley.com or call 937-215-0740 today. Red Ball, you think it, they ink it.
And now, to the TKDS studios and your host, Jackson and Matt for the Sports Now Update Show.
Let's move on to the Miami Valley League. In the MVL, Sydney over West Carrollton 31-28. We saw Piqua beating Butler 28-23. Xenia blowing out Greenville 44-7. Stebbins over Fairborn 34-21. And Tippecanoe blanking Troy 21-0. That all but should clinch a Tippecanoe MVL title. Obviously, they got to win next week. They clinch at least a share for the title. A win next week, they get it outright.
And yeah, they go up against 0-9 West Carrollton next week, so they're on the road for that game, but Tippecanoe should be able to do anything and everything they need to do to take down West Carrollton next week. Troy, they have Greenville, it's OHC. They've got Greenville next week, so both very, very, very winnable games for both Tippecanoe and Troy next week. Xenia, they've got Stebbins next week, the team that's currently second place in the Valley Division, but Xenia has already clinched the Valley Division with their win last night, so Tippecanoe should end up getting a win next week against 0-9 West Carrollton. Troy should be getting a win against 3-6 Greenville, so don't really expect either of those two teams to lose. That's why that game last night between the Red Devils and the Trojans was such a big game for both of those teams. It doesn't really hurt either. It didn't really hurt Troy when it comes to the playoffs and where they're sitting and where their seating is going to be for the playoffs because Tippecanoe was that good of a team. A loss didn't really hurt Troy whatsoever when it comes to their points and their point totals. And with how crazy Region 2 has been, it didn't hurt Troy at all, the fact that they lost last night. So Troy was probably really one to end up winning that game to be the team that was on top of the MVL, but seems like it's another year that we've got Tippecanoe on top of the conference.
Yeah, and a Tippecanoe defense that has been, for as much as I talked about other defense, defenses. For as much as I talked about Tri-Village's defense when we talked about the WOAC, this Tippecanoe defense has been unbelievable this year. To not only to beat Troy, basically your other significant competition in the MVL, but to outright blank them and keep them off the scoreboard. Their fourth game this year that has ended in a shutout. They've only had one game where a team has scored double digits on them, and that was against Xenia. So this is a Tippecanoe defense that is absolutely on fire right now. So, and a defense that's depending on how the coaching staff is playing this, they could still be playing angry. Remember, their last time and they were in the playoff, they had gotten upset early. So, something to keep in mind for the Red Devils for sure when they go into playoff time.
Let's go in and let's talk about the Southwestern Buckeye League. In the SWBL, we saw Bellbrook over Oakwood 28-13. Waynesville beating Eaton 21-17. That's now back-to-back wins for Waynesville and the Spartans. Franklin over Edgewood 21-16. Carlisle beating Middletown Madison 46-8. Ross blanking Monroe, shutting them out 9-0, and Valley View takes a win against Brookville 27-7. That's the game that we're going to talk about in this. Valley View with this win should, as long as they take care of business next week against Waynesville, they will have the outright SWBL title. And you look back at this game, Valley View 1 turnover, Brookville 3 turnovers. And that's really what it comes down to. And I know that that's kind of a cliche thing to say in any level of football, but if you lose the turnover battle, chances are you're going to lose the game. And that's exactly what happened with Brookville yesterday. Quarterback was only 4 for 14 throwing the football, rushing the football. They did have 123 yards on the ground. That looks great, but they also ran it 35 times. So they're only averaging 3.5 yards per carry. Credit to that Valley View defense, because that Valley View defense last night, they came to play forcing turnovers, shutting down the air raid attack, making them a one-dimensional offense, and shutting that down to a point as well.
And yeah, it's not just for me when I look at what we're able to see on the box score and everything. It's not just for me the total turnover ratio between Brookville and Valley View. I'm looking at the first half of production for both teams and then the second half of production for both teams. At the end of the first half, we saw both teams score in the second quarter to make it a 7-7 ball game at the half. 20 unanswered points for Valley View. They were up 7-0, ended up having it tied 7-7 at the half. But 20 unanswered points in that second half for Valley View over Brookville. So that to me is what stands out the most. Brookville was right neck and neck with Valley View in that first half, and then 20-0 was the second half score in favor of Valley View. So Spartans, as of right now, if they take down and end up beating Waynesville, they'll be the outright winners of the Buckeye Division. Franklin, last night with their win, ends up being the outright winners of the Southwestern Division. So it was a big game for Franklin last night, taking down Edgewood. They're 4-0 in conference. The closest team behind them is Bellbrook, who is currently 2-1 in conference, and they've got a road game against Ross in their final week, so the final week of the season. So Bellbrook can only jump to 3-1. So Franklin, the outright winner of the Southwestern Division after last night, and Valley View with the win against Waynesville, they can be the outright winners of the Buckeye Division next week.
Yes, and I remember this being a game pick. I thought Brookville would have an edge in this one. I thought their offense was still pretty solid, although despite a little bit of a struggle game against Eaton, I thought Brookville would get back on track. But Valley View, whose defense was just incredible in this one, holding an offense that has scored or up until that point over right around that 330 points overall on the year, and just about out 100 and just under 190 points in conference too. So, really a really talented offense, the best offense in the entirety of the SWBL to start out this game, and Valley View just completely shut them down. So, credit to a Valley View team that suddenly we're now looking at an 8-1 squad and potentially a momentum builder for playoff time and for the postseason run.
GWOC and GCL COED coming up next. The Friday Night Recap Show powered by TKDS Sports.
The year was 1907. The Cubs won the World Series and the Ford Model R hit the assembly line. While here in Ohio, school administrators came together to form the Ohio High School Athletic Association. One thing that hasn't changed since 1907 is the dedication of the OHSAA to education-based athletics in Ohio. School sports teach responsibility, sportsmanship, and life lessons that stay with students long after their playing days are over. The OHSAA seeks to prepare students not for the next level of sport, but for the next level of life.
When every second counts and every drop matters, you don't settle for ordinary. You power up with Power Mist Racing Fuels. Trusted by champions, engineered for victory. From drag strips to dirt tracks, Power Mist delivers explosive performance, cleaner burns, and unmatched horsepower. Nitro, alcohol, methanol, gasoline blends. Whatever you race, we've got the fuel to ignite your edge. Power Mist Racing Fuels. Born to burn, built to win.
In communities where leaders are forged and legacies are born, the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference proudly celebrates the accomplishments of current and former students. From the playing field to the boardroom, they are the next generation of entrepreneurs, doctors, and executives.
Leaders rise here. Leaders rise here.
Leaders rise here.
Leaders rise here.
Hey, really appreciate you treating us to Canes today, Todd.
Hey, anything from my favorite TV personality. Oh, and Kirk Herbstreit.
Hey, I'm used to it. Hey, you know Canes is our favorite pregame meal. Nothing like kicking off game day with hand-battered cooked-to-order chicken fingers and cane sauce.
Speaking of the game, we gotta get back soon. What's the holdup?
Yeah, what's that noise?
Hello? Hello, anyone there?
We're gonna miss the tailgate.
This is the tailgate.
Raising Cane's chicken fingers.
One love.
And now, to the TKDS studios and your host, Jackson and Matt for the Sports Now Update Show.
Welcome back here to the TKDS Sports Network. Jackson Lightcap, Jonathan Snyder, Matthew Pennington. The TKDS Sports Network and this show, it's all brought to you by Red Ball Specialty Printing. You think it, they ink it. Visit them off Deer Road right there in Springfield, Ohio for all of your specialty printing needs. Whether or not it's custom apparel, t-shirts, novelties, and a lot more. Tell them your friends with TKDS Sports sent you. Dirty Dough, the PAL location. It's what's inside that counts. Sawmill Parkway. If you have a sweet tooth craving, go visit Dirty Dough right there in PAL, Ohio. And then, of course, Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers. One love. Let's get back into it in the Greater Western Ohio Conference. Beaver Creek gets a big win over Wayne. Yes, their playoff chances stay alive. Beaver Creek 20, Wayne 17. Springboro able to get a win over Centerville 30-20. Fairmont with another big win in the conference, upsetting Springfield 10-7, and Miamisburg beating Northmont 28-14. Guys, a couple games I want to talk about here. First off and foremost, what an incredible win from Beaver Creek. We on this show have seen Beaver Creek slowly progress. They got a new coach a couple years ago. Here they go, slowly building. They're starting to play competitive. They got their first conference win in 6 years last year. We saw it. We announced it. I know a couple people out there said that we were crazy. We said no. Look at Beaver Creek. This team is on the rise, and it seemed like they were just one win shy of getting that win. They were just one win shy of completely turning that program. I think that win against a very good Wayne team last night is that win that Beaver Creek can build their foundation on for the future to be competitive in the GWOC.
Yeah, I completely agree. If we're not going to start talking about Beaver Creek and them improving as a team, improving as a program, and being a team that, when all is said and done, they're no longer that, all right, yep, Beaver Creek, another 1-10, another, or not 1-10, 1-9, another 2-8 season. That story in Beaver Creek's football life is that page has been turned. We're no longer looking at Beaver. You can't, especially not after last night. I mean, like you said, Jackson, we've been talking about Beaver Creek. We talked about they might not be able to take down some of the top dogs in the conference, but they're playing better football overall. I mean, you take a look at their out-of-conference losses. Xenia has put together a very good season. That's a rivalry game. The Backyard Brawl, they lost that by 9. Then a road game against Harrison. Harrison is a very, very good team. Lost it 28-21. So Beaver Creek, some tougher out-of-conference schedule when it comes to their overall out-of-conference this year as opposed to years past, and they've played better this year compared to years past, especially out of conference. You take a look at the in-conference games. Had a close win against Miamisburg with how Beaver Creek took down Wayne last night. You would have liked that to have been better than a 2-point win, but weren't able to do anything against Centerville, wasn't able to do anything against Springfield, but their loss to Springboro as well. Springboro, when it comes to the conference as a whole, they're currently tied for second. There's 3 teams sitting at 4-2. Springboro, when it comes to the overall record of every single team in this conference, Springboro's got the best overall record of everybody in the conference. They're 6-3. The closest team behind them, Springfield and Wayne at 5-4. Beaver Creek only lost 13-6 in that game. So this whole narrative and talking point and argument of Beaver Creek, it's just they're not going to do anything inside of this conference. This Beaver Creek team and this program as a whole, with that win last night, anybody that talks about Beaver Creek as a bottom team inside of the GWOC, no chance of beating or no chance of competing against any of the top teams in the conference, that narrative and that conversation ended last night. You cannot put Beaver Creek and no chance at all in the GWOC in the same conversation anymore. Not with what we've seen this coaching staff do since they had a head coaching change. Now, the program with their new head coach has been a complete difference. It has been completely different for Beaver Creek. It wasn't an immediate, this team's a top dog in the GWOC, which with how Beaver Creek was, you would have thought lightning struck twice in the same spot on that field for them to have been able to go from how bad of a team they were to a top dog in the conference. But Beaver Creek is continuing to just play better football year in and year out. We're not going to see them towards the top of the conference this year because they're currently tied for 5th in the conference, 2 games behind Springfield, a game behind Springboro, Wayne, and Fairmont. But we're looking at a Beaver Creek team that is currently tied with Centerville when it comes to their overall conference record. And a couple years ago, we'd be looking at Beaver Creek as, yep, there's another 0-7 in conference year. So you've got to give every prop you can to this Beavers team and what they've been able to do this season. Like you said, Jackson, we've seen it build slowly and slowly year after year. We're starting to see some fruits of the labor for Beaver Creek this year. And if they can keep this kind of growth going, I'm excited to see what Beaver Creek's going to be able to do inside of this conference a couple years from now, if they keep growing at the pace that they've been growing at.
Yeah, I can say the same. I'm excited to see if Beaver Creek can keep this momentum going. And if I can give a theory onto why that growth is happening now, this is coming from someone who's not living in the state. But you look at the statistics of their wins, and Beaver Creek it now throughout this year, Beaver Creek has started to forge an identity for themselves. And that identity is, we're going to be in your face running the ball, and we're going to find a way to grind out 4 yards, 5 yards every single play, get ourselves in manageable third down spots, and keep running the football. You take a look at the stats of this game, 54 rushing attempts for 273 on the ground. That's a lot of handoffs, especially with averaging about 5 per carry. I don't blame them for running the ball that much. And a lot of these games, they like handing the ball off. They like getting their running backs going. They want to see how guys like Kellen Reeves can play in that system. And they have a couple of other people. Calvin Sabata throughout this one, 78 yards on 12 carries for 6.5 average is really solid performance for any running back. So, they got running backs. They love handing the ball off to them, and their quarterback even as well. Sabata has been under center for them as well. Love using his legs and trying to get yards that way. So Beaver Creek running the ball has been a really solid outfit so far, and I'm glad to see that they've got that high-profile GWOC win. Because let's face it, Wayne is a high-profile team in the GWOC. You can look at, okay, well, they beat Northmont or they beat Miamisburg, two teams that are normally near the bottom of the conference. Now beating Wayne, suddenly, like you guys said, now eyes need to be turning to Beaver Creek.
Yeah, and I don't think that this is a loss that should degrade Wayne by any means. I know that out there they're going to be, Wayne lost to Beaver Creek. No, as we've mentioned, this is a different Beaver Creek team from years past. We've been trying to say that for the past couple of years. This team's slowly building, and I think that win is that win that's finally going to be able to put them over the top. And with that point being said, this team reminds me a lot of what we were talking about with Springboro. There were two teams this season in the GWOC that were building that have not been able to get that big in-conference win to put them over the top. Both those teams got those wins this season. Beaver Creek against Wayne, Springboro against Fairmont. You look at what's upcoming in this GWOC conference. Springfield's going to be Springfield. Great defense, junior quarterback. They're going to be competitive again next year. They'll probably win the conference again next year. Fairmont is losing 33 seniors. Centerville is losing a multitude amount of seniors. Wayne will be Wayne. Wayne will be solid. But who are going to be some of the other top teams that are going to compete with Wayne and Springfield at the top of that conference? Doors wide open next year. I think these wins from Springboro and from Beaver Creek will be the foundation for them to build to take that next step into fighting towards the top of the conference in 2026. It's going to be great to watch. Another game I wanted to talk about in the GWOC, I was at that game last night, was the Springfield Fairmont game. That was an incredible game. Fairmont, for some reason, just matches up great with Springfield year in and year out. It was a defensive battle. Fairmont was able to control the clock. That's what they want to do. And Fairmont was able to jump from the 14 seed, the 15 seed. They were out of the playoffs by 3 spots all the way up into the 11 seed. They don't quite control their own destiny, but a big win against Beaver Creek could clinch them a playoff spot next week.
And yeah, the one thing that I keep talking about when it comes to this Beaver Creek team and how they're so much better and how we need to actually start talking about this team and why this program is continuing to get better and why it's nice seeing this program continue to get better. The last time they had an above 500 season overall was way back in 2017. That was where Trotwood went 15-0, won a state title. We still had the entire Miami Valley League inside of the GWOC. Trotwood was inside of the GWOC. Lebanon was inside of the GWOC. That's how long it's been since we've seen Beaver Creek. They were 6-4 that year. The season prior to that, 2016, they were 4-6. But it has been a while since we've seen Beaver Creek end up being a team that even gets to 4 wins on the season. Every single season after that 6-4 year, they were either 2-8, 1-9, or didn't win a game on the season. They went 0-5 in the COVID year, 0-10 as well, and another season in between from that 2018 season to now. So it has been a long time since we've seen Beaver Creek be this competitive inside of this conference. So like I said, it's just really nice to see, especially since we've been talking about Beaver Creek over these past couple years, just slowly getting better, slowly just seeing signs of improvement for this Beavers team. It's nice seeing Beaver Creek, a team that a couple years ago, like I said, you wouldn't even look at Beaver Creek at the start of the season. You'd be like, yep, there's a team that's going to finish 7th or 8th in the conference. There's no other way of looking at it with how Beaver Creek had been playing. There wasn't really a way of looking at Beaver Creek and saying they were going to win at least 2 conference games. That wasn't in the conversation whatsoever. They're now a team that if they end up taking down Fairmont next week, they're going to be a top 4 team in the conference, because if they end up taking down Fairmont, yes, they're going to be tied when it comes to their conference record, but in my opinion, that's a head-to-head matchup. Both teams would be 4-3 in conference. That, in my opinion, should put Beaver Creek ahead of Fairmont when it comes to the standings in the conference. So it's safe to say Beaver Creek right now, you've got to like what you've been seeing. And like we said, when it comes down to the playoff points, if they end up taking down Fairmont, I don't know if it would be enough to put them into the playoffs, but it's going to give them a decent shot, and it's going to give them an opportunity to be a team that makes it into the playoffs this year. It's, like I said, it's going to be interesting because if they take down Fairmont, we don't know how the points for everybody else is. We've got a whole we're probably going to talk about it for 15 to 20 minutes when we get to Region 2 later on in the show, but there's a lot of craziness that can happen. We could still see Beaver Creek be a playoff team at this point. So you've got to give Beaver Creek praises, like I said earlier, with what they've been able to do this year.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because Beaver Creek definitely has if they beat Fairmont, suddenly you're now looking at the possibility of being an 11 seed, a 12 seed. Hilliard, Darby, and Marysville also play each other, the 13 and 14 seeds in that needs this next week. So something to keep an eye out on for sure. But throughout this whole thing, the GWOC in and of itself, we've seen this be a conference where, again, and I shared this with you during our little group text, the scene from Always Sunny in Philadelphia where the guy has the conspiracy board. Or I mentioned that before, but it still rings true. That's what it feels like when we're talking about the GWOC and Region 2 as a whole right now. But regardless of saying that, even with the loss to Fairmont, talking about some of the other teams in the GWOC, Springfield still has the edge in terms of conference standings. They're still only a one-loss team. Everybody else has 2 losses, and they play against a winless Northmont this next week. So Springfield's given themselves that cushion in the conference where they can afford to drop a game. So give them credit for finding a way to put themselves at a point where they can go into a week 9 and they can afford to take a loss. So with all that said, you've got other teams such as Wayne, which Wayne, by the way, that puts them, I don't think they're in danger of losing their home playoff game, but that puts them around the 7th seed right now with that loss. So another thing to keep an eye on in terms of matchups there.
Yeah, and Wayne plays Centerville next week. And, guys, you hit it right on the money. Again, Darby plays Marysville next week, the 13-14 seed. Hilliard-Davidson, they control their own destiny, but they have a tough matchup next week against Upper Arlington. Beaver Creek, who's the 15, plays Fairmont, the 11. Region 2, it's all going to come down to that. Beaver Creek, you can win, and you get a game or 2 help. You're going to find yourself in the playoff. Fairmont, if you win, it depends on how you win to clinch it on your own terms. If not, and if you win, say, by 3, you're going to need some help elsewhere as well. So focus turns to that Marysville Derby game and then that Davidson and Upper Arlington game as well. In the GCL COED, before we shift focus on to our Cincinnati region, Baden over Alter 28-14. That will lock up Baden with a GCL COED title. CJ over Carroll 34-14. Fenwick beating McNicholas 16-14. That's a huge upset win for Bishop Fenwick, also keeping their hopes alive as well.
And yeah, if what I was seeing before the game was right, McNicholas was projected to win that game by 20 points. So that shows how big of a win that game is for the Falcons of Bishop Fenwick. I mean, also when it comes down to their playoff hopes and their chances of possibly making the playoffs, it bumps them up to the 10 seed in their region with one game obviously left to go against Carroll. If they handle business against Carroll and get a good enough win, it's the team directly below them, Taylor. If they get a win, if Fenwick gets a convincing win, Taylor gets a convincing win. Bishop Fenwick can't drop below Taylor. So that's Kenton Ridge is also in that division or in that region. And we already talked about the fact that they have London next week. So that was a huge, huge, huge win for Bishop Fenwick and the Falcons, especially when it comes to the playoffs. When it comes to the conference, Baden, if they win next week, they're the undisputed champions of the GCL COED if they win next week. So there wasn't really a conversation for Fenwick to be a potential GCL COED champion. It wouldn't have even been possible because Alter Baden, they can't tie. So one of those two teams would have been undefeated in conference. Fenwick had no chance, but that was a huge win for the Falcons when it comes to their playoff chances. They've got a game, like I said, against Carroll for the final week of the season. They win that convincingly, that could easily be enough to give Fenwick a playoff spot in Region 16.
Yeah, and give them credit for, and again, some of the beauty of that this format that we have now is you can see teams go on a run like that late in the year. Like you mentioned Bishop Fenwick before that point, a 4-4 outfit, certainly certainly okay, but really, when we're talking about some of the upper tier teams in the GCO COED, you look at Archbishop, you look at their games against Alter, 47-7 loss. You look at Baden, 41-13 loss. And then all of a sudden this McNicholas game comes out. They pull out a close win. And suddenly you're now looking at a team that is in a playoff spot, snuck into the 10 seed right now, and could legitimately, have an opportunity to move up depending on how Roger Bacon and Washington Courthouse play. If those two teams end up losing, which granted that one might be, but Washington has Miami Trace, a tough matchup there, and Roger Bacon has a Purcell Marion squad that could be itching for an upset. So we could genuinely see Bishop Fenwick get a home playoff game to start out the playoffs here. So really looking forward to seeing how that one's going to go.
We're going to take a small break. We're a little bit past the top of the hour, 9:06 a.m. Eastern Time. Guys, we have a lot of conferences to talk about in the Cincinnati region right in our next segment. We're talking about the GCL South, the CMAC, the MVC, the SBAAC, and the SWOC. All that and more coming up next on the Friday Night Recap Show, powered by TKDS.
Looking for future leaders we can believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Ohio. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It includes learning to listen, accepting responsibility, being a good role model, and it's about respect. The result, it transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. This message presented by the Ohio High School Athletic Association and the Ohio Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
Hey, really appreciate you treating us to Canes today, Todd.
Hey, anything from my favorite TV personality. Oh, and Kirk Herbstreit.
Hey, I'm used to it. Hey, Canes is our favorite pregame meal. Nothing like kicking off game day with hand-battered cooked-to-order chicken fingers and cane sauce.
Speaking of the game, we gotta get back soon. What's the holdup?
Yeah, what's that noise?
Hello? Hello, anyone there?
We're gonna miss the tailgate.
This is the tailgate.
Raising Cane's chicken fingers.
One love.
Central State University is home.
We on the way. Yeah, it's my time. Who I'm gonna be when I'm in the limelight. Shining in the dark like I was a nightlight. It's my time, yeah. I went from the back to front, last to one. Future looking like magnanimous. We on the way. We on the way.
For God.
For Central.
For State.
When life gets messy, make it sweet. Only Dirty Dough delivers maximum flavor from the inside-out layers, mix-ins, and gooey fillings. No filters, no fuss, just real cookies for real life. Every week, a rotating lineup of handcrafted flavors. Join the loyalty program, earn points on every purchase, redeem for free cookies, and get a cookie on your birthday. Dirty Dough, it's what's inside that counts.
And now, to the TKDS studios and your host, Jackson and Matt, for the Sports Now Update Show.
Again, a lot coming up on the network here today. Of course, Central State will be taking on Kentucky Christian. That game kicks off at 2 o'clock. You can watch that on the Marauder Sports Network, maraudersports.tv, or on the Roku channel, Marauder Sports Network. Kyle Funk will be alongside Curtis Grant, Corey Owens with that. I'll be at Wittenberg as Wittenberg will take on Denison at 4 o'clock. Watch that on the Tiger Sports Network, tigersportsnetwork.com, or on Roku at the Tiger Sports Network. And then, of course, the Jimmie Bell pregame Buckeyes show as well. Jimmie Bell and Doug Worthington, two former Ohio State Buckeyes, live from Columbus, will be talking about their upcoming game today against Wisconsin at 3:30. College football right here on the TKDS Sports Network. Guys, but before we get to the college realm, let's wrap up our high school stuff. We still have about an hour and 50 minutes left in this show as well. A lot of conferences we want to talk about here, and the reason why we bunched a lot of these together are because some of these are the conferences that have basically already been decided. There's been a lot that have been decided in that Cincinnati region. So in the GCL South, Elder beats Bishop Chatard 28-7, LaSalle over Louisville 35-24. St. Xavier over St. Ignatius 41-7. Moeller will be playing St. Edwards later today, so keep an eye out for that. Keep in mind, Elder has already won the outright title for the GCL South. In the SWOC, we saw St. Francis de Sales over Harrison's, a game-winning field goal. What an incredible drive that was at the very end of the game. They beat Harrison 23-21. Talawanda back in the win column after last week's loss against Harrison 35-14, and Bishop Watterson annihilating Northwest 49-12. Keep in mind, Harrison has already won the title for the SWOC. In the Miami Valley Conference, CHCA over Roger Bacon 36-21. Cincinnati Country Day 46-14. New Miami beating Laughlin 24-14. St. Bernard Elmwood Place blanking Miami Valley Christian 27-0. Clark Montessori will blow out Norwood 36-0. And Purcell Marion over Summit Country Day 28-7. Guys, we saw the CHCA Roger Bacon game right here on the network last night. And in years past, that game has typically come down to whoever wins the Miami Valley Conference. And last night, really no different, but keep in mind, this year in the MVC, unlike the last couple of years, there's 3 divisions of 4 teams instead of 2 divisions of 6 teams. So they mixed up the divisions a little bit, and when you look overall at the divisions, Cincinnati Country Day, CHCA, St. Bernard Elmwood Place, all undefeated in the conference with 1 week to go.
And yeah, you talk about the game between CHCA and Roger Bacon last night. I mean, you got to give props to the Eagles with how they played that game. If you take a look at the box score and you take a look at how that game was early on, Roger Bacon was up 14-3 at the end of the first quarter. With 2 minutes to go in the first half, they were up 21-10. So Roger Bacon was in the lead convincingly early in that game. A quick touchdown immediately after for CHCA before the half ended made it a 21-16 game. But then after that, it was 20 unanswered points, 26 unanswered total after being down 21-10 for CHCA to claw their way back and end up taking the win. So like I said, you got to give props to the Eagles with the way they played in that game. Roger Bacon was in control, and they were in control early in that game. It didn't seem like, at least in the early stages of that game, that the Spartans really could do wrong, and it didn't seem like CHCA really had anything for them. But then the 26 unanswered points happened, and everybody was wondering what the heck happened to Roger Bacon. Where did they go? Where was that offense that we saw in that first quarter and pretty much almost all of the second quarter? Where did that offense go? So you got to give CHCA credit with the way they were able to win that game last night. They got punched in the mouth early, and it was a heavyweight punch by Roger Bacon, but they were able to keep their head on their shoulders and push themselves back into the game and get themselves a win. So big win for the Eagles last night.
Yeah, not to mention a situation where you're putting and granted he is a senior, but Griffin Richard, you're putting him down by what was it, 14-3, 21-10 at near the end of the first half. And you're asking him to really lead this team on a charge. And how about the performance he puts out over 300 yards of passing and 2 touchdowns. So touchdowns, doesn't turn the ball over once. So give credit to Griffin Richard as well for leading that charge. Just wanted to highlight his performance as well. But for the entirety of the Miami Valley Conference, we talked North College Hill a lot earlier on in the year, and give them credit for getting to a point where they're 6-0. The Summit Country Day game and a 46-14 loss still puts them in a really advantageous spot for playoff seeding as well. I remember we were talking a potential for a home playoff game for North College Hill. Unfortunately, actually, I shouldn't say a home game plus a bye for North College Hill. Unfortunately, don't believe that will happen, but still a very, very great season for a North College Hill squad who's really turned their program around quick. We're talking 1-8 in 2023, a 3-win team in 2024, and now all of a sudden a 7-win team in 2025. So credit where it's due to North College Hill.
Of course, let's go into the South Buckeye Athletic and Academic Conference in the SBAAC. Yesterday, we saw Batavia over New Richmond getting their third win of the season, 41-34. Bethel Tate beating Blanchester 35-34. Claremont Northeastern beating Fayetteville 49-6. Clint Massey blanking Western Brown 37-0. Williamsburg shuts out East Clinton 49-0. Goshen, after a 2-game losing streak, is back in the win column with a big win against Wilmington 49-21. Guys, the national division in this conference still up for grabs. Clint Massey has already clinched the American division in the SBAAC, but in the national division, Williamsburg, Bethel Tate, that game comes down to a conference or to a division title next week. That game will be played at Bethel Tate High School. But guys, both teams 3-0 in conference, but it's not going to be the premier game that you think it is. Williamsburg outscoring their opponents 359-72, a perfect 9-0 on the year. Bethel Tate outscoring their opponents 277-260. They're 4-5 on the season.
Yeah, that you took the words right out of my mouth, Jackson. It's a good game when it comes down to the implications of it. What should happen in that game is not going to be that good for Bethel Tate. I'll tell you that much. I mean, Bethel Tate has put together, when it comes to their conference, a pretty good season. Only 4-5 overall, but I mean, like you said, you take a look at Williamsburg on the season. Perfect 9-0, played some pretty decent out-of-conference competition. I mean, McLean's a pretty good team this year. Roger Bacon's been a good team this year. And they're 9-0 on the season. They played Marymount, Hillsborough, and Reading were the other teams they played out-of-conference. Those games they should have won by as much as they did. So Williamsburg has put together a very, very good season. I mean, their last 2 games, they've outscored their opponents 114-0 against Blanchester and East Clinton. So Williamsburg has put together a pretty good season at 9-0, and like you said, it's both teams undefeated in their conference record, both 3-0, but one of them's 9-0, the other's 4-5 on the season. So when it comes down to what it's going to mean for the SBAAC and the National Division, everything's on the line for both of those two teams, but Williamsburg should be able to handle business against Bethel Tate next week.
Yeah, especially with that Williamsburg defense. It's been a defense that has been incredible in and out of conference. All their out of conference wins, they've never had a team score more than 14 points against them, and that 14-point game was on the road at Marymount. So, really, really incredible defense and a solid, squad overall for Williamsburg. So definitely expect that one to go the way of the Wildcats. But throughout this entire conference, we mentioned earlier that Goshen's had a pretty solid year for themselves. The 2 losses that they've had, New Richmond, and Clinton Massey, which the Clinton Massey game, that one Clinton Massey is 4-0 in conference, and they've rolled past pretty much everybody apart from one team, and that was Tri-Valley. So, regardless, yes, Goshen's had a pretty solid year for themselves as well. Seeing some really good things out of them. Especially at 49-21 against Wilmington, and an offense that really keeps pace with a lot of different programs. A lot of points that this team can put up on you. So another team to look out for when it comes to postseason runs.
In the CMAC, not a whole lot to talk about within the Cincinnati Metro Athletic Conference. Taft over Aiken, 45-0. Withrow beating Hughes, 30-0. Western Hills taking down Woodward 48-0. Taft right now the front runner in that conference. They have Woodward, a team that has frankly struggled, and I think that's a little bit of an understatement this season for the Bulldogs. So we're going to take a small break. When we return, we'll talk about our final 2 conferences in the Cincinnati area. That's the final 3 conferences, the CHL, the ECC, and the GMC. A lot to talk about in all of those conferences. So it's all coming up next and more on the Friday Night Recap Show, powered by TKDS Sports.
just got bigger.
That's how we do it, fellas.
And better.
The energy is contagious.
Because we're back.
It's still a party here on HBCU Go.
And this season, it's about the grit.
Unbelievable.
The glory.
This conference is anybody's to take.
And the clash of champions.
Every game is our championship game.
The 2025 HBCU Go football season is coming this fall, only on HBCU Go.
In life, things aren't scripted.
If you're an athlete, we need people like you and translate those skills to officiating.
You can get a lot out of it.
It happens in every town, in every game.
We never have a perfect game, but the rewards always outweigh the negativities.
Looking to elevate your brand with quality custom printing? Red Ball Specialty Printing in Springfield, Ohio. Family owned and dedicated to attention, quality, and service. We customize everything from shirts, drinkware, pens, awards, and more. Whether 50 pieces or 5,000, we deliver color crisp, branding brilliant. From promotional apparel to recognition awards, we're your one-stop for impactful merchandise. Visit rbspdesignschipley.com or call 937-215-0740 today. Red Ball, you think it, they ink it.
And now, to the TKDS studios and your host, Jackson and Matt for the Sports Now Update Show.
Back here on the TKDS Sports Network, Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington, Jonathan Snyder. Let's get into the Cincinnati Hills League. In the CHL from last night's action, we saw Indian Hill over Deer Park 41-6, Merrimont beating Finneytown 28-7, Wyoming beating Reading. They win that one 49-13, and Taylor over Madera 20-19. Keep in mind, Indian Hill already has that conference on lock. They have it is completely up with them. As long as they can win their Week 10 matchup, they will be crowned CHL outright champions. Guys in the Eastern Cincinnati Conference, Lebanon over Walnut Hills 42-8, Little Miami beating Milford 45-14, Loveland over West Claremont 56-21, Kings beating Turpin 38-26, Anderson, their closest game they've played all year, Winton Woods, falls short. Anderson winning that one 37-30. Guys in the Eastern Cincinnati Conference with that win, Anderson is in the driver's seat. To win an outright ECC title, all they have to do is beat Loveland next week or hope Kings will end up losing to Walnut Hills. But the battle I want to look at is Lebanon and Winton Woods. That's going to be a battle for third place next week in the Eastern Cincinnati Conference. That game being played at Lebanon High School.
Yeah, once again, it's not for the conference overall, but it's another high-stakes matchup that we're seeing in Week 10 of the regular season. I mean, you've got Lebanon, like you said, they're 6-2 overall, or 6-2 in the conference, 7-2 overall. Winton Woods, 6-2 in conference, 7-2 overall. The one glaring difference between the two teams, both offenses have put up over 250 points on the season. Lebanon's defense has allowed 217. Winton Woods' defense has allowed 114, and that's even with allowing 37 points last night to an Anderson team that, if they play at the pace that they've been playing at, Anderson could end up putting up almost 500 points total at the end of the regular season if they play against Loveland the way they've played all season long. They're at 447 total points on the season. They need 53 points against Loveland, which they've already done that 3 different times this year. We're 3 points away from doing it against Little Miami, was 1 point away from doing it against Cooper, was 4 points away from doing it against Kings and West Claremont. So it is very possible for Anderson to put up 53 points on the season, but that just, like I said, that goes to show the difference, at least when I'm seeing in this Lebanon Winton Woods matchup. You've got two really good offenses, 296 points for Lebanon this year, 253 for Winton Woods. Lebanon has allowed 217. Winton Woods, after allowing 37 to Anderson last night, has only allowed 114. So that to me is the big difference between the two teams that are going to be fighting for that third place spot. But it still should be a very good game next week.
Yeah, and I want to talk Winton Woods because, a 7-point loss to Anderson is nothing to be, too upset about, just in general. But the nature of that win, that was 37-30. When I think Winton Woods, I think of a stifling defense that keeps them in games. This time, they were keeping pace in what was quite frankly a boat race between them and Anderson. Anderson, one of the best offensive teams in the conference and in the entirety of the region. And so something to keep in mind for this Winton Woods squad, that their offense can turn it up when they need to. Putting up 30 points against Anderson and keeping pace in, like I mentioned, what was essentially a boat race at that point, is something to keep an eye on throughout the entirety of these next couple of games.
John, you mentioned that Anderson is one of the best, has one of the best offenses in the conference, one of the best offenses in the region. I'm going to go a step farther than you on that. I think that Anderson has one of the best offenses across the entire state of Ohio as well. I mean, this is an Anderson team that we're talking about putting up 500 points as well for the 2025 season, and not only paired with a great offense, but they have a tremendous defense with it as well. I think it's no surprise here that Anderson is going to be one win away from winning another ECC title. Still a lot to go up for grabs between Lebanon and Winton Woods, and another game that's a little bit under the radar is Kings. Kings plays Walnut Hills. Walnut Hills, it's interesting because in Region 4, with that Hamilton win, we're going to talk about that here in just a couple of minutes. Hamilton is now the 10 seed, but they don't yet control their own destiny. They play Coleraine this upcoming week, a team that's been mathematically eliminated. Hamilton, you beat the brakes off Coleraine, you're going to the playoffs and there's no other way around it. But if it's a closer game, that opens up the door for Walnut Hills to possibly find themselves knocking out Hamilton as well. So Hamilton, easiest way in, beat the brakes off Coleraine. This is a team that should be able to do it. But on the other side, Walnut Hills, you could still work your way in with a little bit of help, but you got to take down the powerhouse of Kings this upcoming weeks. Talking about the Greater Miami Conference as well, let's go over their scores. Mason over Coleraine 38-21. Lakota West beating Oak Hills 38-6. Princeton blanking Fairfield 35-0. Lakota East annihilating Sycamore 38-0. And this score, this is what decided the conference. Hamilton beats Middletown 14-10. Middletown, 5 turnovers last night. Not only does that now put Hamilton and give them enough points to put them in the playoff picture heading into the final week of the season, that also clinches the GMC for Princeton, with Princeton winning last night. They are now your outright GMC champions. And that also gives me the upset that I picked on Game Picks to close out the week 6-0.
Yeah, it's there. You go bragging about your 6-0. All I'm gonna say is when I did that week 2, picking Waynesville over Greenview, you didn't hear me bragging about it. But the good thing for Middleton,
I don't think you were on the show the following day.
I know I was for that show. The good thing for Middletown with that loss is it doesn't hurt them playoff wise. They're still currently the number 1 seed in Region 2. Currently have already clinched a top 4 seed, so they have a bye plus a home game already locked in for them on the season. So when it comes down to, and if they end up winning against Princeton next week, they lock themselves in with that number 1 seed. And even with a loss, there's a very, very high possibility. With the loss, in a good loss for Middletown, Troy has to beat the brakes off of Greenville to end up even having a chance at jumping them when it comes down to Region 2 in the standings. But Middletown, even with the worst loss possible for them against Princeton next week, like I said, still guarantees them a top 4 seed. So that's the one good thing for Middletown. Yes, you're not going to like the way you lost that game, especially Callie Jones, the head coach, is not going to like the way that game ended up playing out. 5 turnovers allowed Hamilton to get an onside kick to start the second half of the game. Fumble at the goal line. It was not the game, if you're Middletown, especially not this late in the season, that you want to be playing. That's the only, in my opinion, bad thing about that game for Middletown is what does that do to the team's mentality? And what does that do to the team's momentum or trying to build momentum going into the playoffs? Because you've got Princeton up against you next week. That's not an easy game for Middletown. That's a game that I could easily see them losing, especially with it being a road game for Middletown as well. So it's safe to say when it comes down to playoffs and when it comes down to the implications for playoffs, when it comes to everything, obviously we talk about it being a road game for Middletown. Princeton doesn't really have a field right now, so it's being played at Lockland. So it's technically it's an away game for Middletown, but it's an away game for both teams technically. But it's safe to say when it comes down to, for me, the biggest problem with that game against Hamilton is what is that going to do to Middletown's confidence and momentum come playoff time? Because, yes, they're going to be a team that – and also you got to think about first-round bye with the playoffs. We've seen in multiple different levels of sports, teams that have a first-round bye in the playoffs, they might start off the playoffs slow with whoever they play in the second round. So that game for Middletown, to me, it's not a – yes, everything when it comes down to how they lost the game is going to be something that's going to be definitely talked about a lot today in the film room and in upcoming practices throughout the week heading into that Princeton game. But for me, the big question mark for Middletown is what is that going to do to the team's confidence? What's that going to do to the potential momentum this team is trying to get going to the playoffs? And what is that going to do to the morale of this team come playoff time? Because 5 turnovers in a loss that you only lose by 4 points in, that's got to be something that if you're Middletown, you have to completely forget about this Hamilton game. Because if you don't, we could end up seeing, if it ends up weighing them down, they lose to Princeton next week. They have a bye week. They're slow out of the gates in their week 1 or week 2, round 2 playoff game. We could see Middletown be a 1 or 2 seed and get knocked out in their first playoff game this year. So to me, I need to see how Middletown bounces back after that loss to Hamilton last night.
And I'm not saying you're wrong. We could definitely see that massive change for Middletown. I mean, that's a loss that, like you mentioned, 5 turnovers is something that will hinder any team's confidence. But I will also say, hey, that's also the type of game that also could be the type of wake-up game that Middletown could use and say, hey, look, guys, even though we're the 1 seed, we're not as invincible as these rankings the rankings may kind of say we are. So we've got to find a way to continue to improve ourselves in practice and find a way to make sure that we're playing the best football that we can. And we could see that be ultimately their get right game. I should know. I'm wearing the apparel of a team that had a get right game last year. So and again, I'm not saying that we could see the opposite happen. I mean, that's just sometimes it can be a volatile nature like that, but I just wanted to bring that up. Another game that I want to bring up, however, in the GMC, we've got West versus East next week. Lakota West, Lakota East. They're the 6th seed and the 7th seed right now in Region 4. So obviously huge implications for who they're going to play. Hey, and considering that Hamilton and Fairfield play each other, if Hamilton ends up losing, Hamilton and Fairfield do not play each other. That's a mistake on my end. Fairfield plays Oak Hills. That's a mistake on my part. But again, if we see the standings stay the same, currently Lakota East would be playing Hamilton, and a Hamilton squad that is that has won 2 games in a row. Granted, not by much, but they've won 2 games in a row and facing a Coleraine team that could be another win for them. So, suddenly you're now looking at Hamilton as a potential, okay, maybe they could sneak up on eke up on a team or two, and they could, at least keep the first round close. So that's another game that whoever loses that one, they could end up facing Hamilton in the first round of the playoffs. So bringing that up just as an aside, because Hamilton and momentum, it can be a killer when it comes to the first round.
Matt, touching base on your point of view, on your point with Middletown, the good news for Middletown is that it's just one game. You laid it all out there. You played probably the worst game that you have played in years. It is one game. You are still in favor of the number 1 seed in Region 2. The only thing that it did was hinder your chances of getting a share at the GMC title. Don't let that one game bleed in to multiple games to where you have to sit on it in a bye week. Even if you go out and lose next week to Princeton, that's okay, but keep it competitive, play good football, don't turn over the football, and take that into your bye week with some confidence, and then you're going to be playing a lower seed come round 2 of the OHSA postseason. That's the good news for Middletown. What I'm going to be concerned about is if Middletown goes out there and plays similar to what they did last night. Because now you have a bye week where you're going to have to sit on that instead of the good, and that's where it could start bleeding over, and that's not what you want heading into the playoffs. So Middletown, the good news, it's one game. Do not let it bleed over to multiple. And John, kind of furthering on your point as well, in Region 4, if I'm anybody in this region, if I'm a higher seed, there is one team I don't want to play. And that's Hamilton. That's the Big Blue. And you look at their record and say, oh, well, they're only 3-6. There's a reason why they're only 3-6 and still have the number 10 seed. You look at the games that they've played this season. You look at who they've lost to. You look at the close games that they've played. They beat Lakota West earlier on. They beat Fairfield. They've beaten Middletown. They've beaten Sycamore. They played close to Lakota East. They only lost that game by 4. They played close to Mason. They only lost that game by 7. They even played close against Princeton. They only lost that game by 12. And in fact, they were actually leading that game up into the 4th quarter as well. So this is a Hamilton team that you can't just look at their seeding and their record and say, oh, this is an easy win. That's not it at all. This is a team that is playing their best quality football heading into the playoffs where you want it. They just took down Middletown, who was the number one seed in Region 2. If the season were to end right now, they'd be playing Lakota East again. On the road, they'd be playing Lakota East, a team that they lost to by 4. This is a Hamilton team that I can tell you firsthand and foremost, anybody with the seeds 4 through 8 who have a home game, they do not want to play this Hamilton Big Blue team come playoff time. That has a Cinderella story in the making as well. It's going to be fun to cover it on throughout. Guys, let's talk about some playoff points. That's all coming up next on the flip side of this commercial break. You're watching the Friday Night Recap Show powered by TKDS.
When every second counts and every drop matters, you don't settle for ordinary. You power up with Power Mist Racing Fuels. Trusted by champions, engineered for victory. From drag strips to dirt tracks, Power Mist delivers explosive performance, cleaner burns, and unmatched horsepower. Nitro, alcohol, methanol, gasoline blends. Whatever you race, we've got the fuel to ignite your edge. Power Mist Racing Fuels. Born to burn, built to win.
The year was 1907. The Cubs won the World Series and the Ford Model R hit the assembly line. While here in Ohio, school administrators came together to form the Ohio High School Athletic Association. One thing that hasn't changed since 1907 is the dedication of the OHSAA to education-based athletics in Ohio. School sports teach responsibility, sportsmanship, and life lessons that stay with students long after their playing days are over. The OHSAA seeks to prepare students not for the next level of sport, but for the next level of life.
In communities where leaders are forged and legacies are born, the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference proudly celebrates the accomplishments of current and former students. From the playing field to the boardroom, they are the next generation of entrepreneurs, doctors, and executives.
Leaders rise here. Leaders rise here.
Leaders rise here.
Leaders rise here.
A restaurant that only serves chicken fingers was one man's and a dog's dream. They focused on the basics, and all that hard work paid off. Because Cane's puts the dine in dynasty, the yum in triumphant, the feast in undefeasted. This is Raising Cane's, and I'm Kirk Herbstreit, and I'm looking forward to serving you one heck of a chicken finger meal. Now, what can I get you, champ?
I'll take the box combo.
And now, to the TKDS studios and your host, Jackson and Matt, for the Sports Now Update Show.
Back here on the TKDS Sports Network, Jackson Lightcap, Jonathan Snyder, and Matthew Pennington. As we roll into the final 20 minutes of this hour and into hour number 3 of this 3-hour show, we're going to go over some playoff points. Ken Keller from WPKO will be joining us at 10:15. We'll see Jimmie Bell, our good friend, joining us at 10:30 to talk a little bit of Columbus, our game picks at 10:45. So, as always, we're going to talk about some of the playoff points and how this playoff picture really sits right now for the regions that we want to talk about here in Southwest Ohio before we head into Week 10 of the football season. Once again, these are from Joe Idle's websites. If you'd like to follow along or if you'd like to get a better idea on any other region that we're talking about, go visit joeidle.com. Joe Idle, although these are unofficial playoff points, it is the next best thing. It's the closest thing to official you can have. We just have to put that term unofficial right next to it. But again, this is from Joe Idle's site. He does a tremendous job helping all the athletes out, knowing where they're at, all the personnel who works the events, knowing where they're at, the schools, the communities. A lot of hard work that goes into it. So Joe Idle, shout out to you. We love you. Thanks for doing this and allowing us media folk to talk about this, especially right here on this show. So let's start with Region 28. I'm going to mention the first couple of teams that are on the outside looking in and then the top 12 teams. The teams that are currently on the outside looking in, Mississinawa Valley, Riverside, and Cedarville. Those are the first 3 teams out. If the season were to end today, Fort Recovery, Manchester, Lehman Catholic, and Minster would all be your home teams. New Bremen and Sonia, Notre Dame, and CCPA would be your home teams. Your first-round buys would go Cincinnati Country Day, St. Henry, Eastern, and then Marion Local. Guys, I think the biggest storyline right now is you look at Riverside. They control their own destiny, but there is the number 14 seed as of right now. Lehman Catholic still has yet to clinch, but they control their own destiny. Same with Minster. New Bremen hasn't clinched. A lot still to be decided here in this Region 28.
And yeah, the main reason that Riverside still controls their own destiny is because they still haven't played their Week 9 game. They face off against Lehman Catholic today, and then they have Miami East as their final game of the regular season. So that's why the Pirates are still, even all the way down to the 14th spot, are still in control of their own destiny because they play the number 10 team in this region today in Lehman Catholic. So their points for this week have yet to be inputted because obviously they haven't played their game yet. So Cincinnati College Prep, they also have not played their game. They played Gamble Montessori today as well. So they've already clinched a top 8 seed, but still in that running and still in that fighting chance of trying to get past Cincinnati Country Day for that final top 4 spot. But that's going to be tough to do with the Nighthawks and how they've played so far this season. The Nighthawks have Clark Montessori is their final game of the regular season, and with a win would lock themselves in that top 4 spot because Cincinnati College Prep, the maximum amount of points they can get with 2 very convincing wins in their last 2 games is 17.9. If Cincinnati Country Day wins their Week 10 game, their minimum points is 18.7. So Cincinnati Country Day wins. Everything I'm talking about Cincinnati College Prep fighting for that top 4 spot is out of the window, is out of the possibility, out of the realm of possibility because Cincinnati Country Day would clinch that top 4 spot. But yeah, it's also interesting seeing New Bremen at the number 8 seed right now, not in control of their own destiny. They play St. John's. That might be why they're not in control of their own destiny because St. John's is 1-8 on the season. They got their first win of the year against Parkway last night. So that's probably why New Bremen is not technically in control of their own destiny, but if they get a win, they get to 9.8 points, and their only way of being knocked out would be every single team that can possibly passing them when it comes to and getting their max amount of points, which realistically is not even possible because Lehman Catholic and Riverside both end up having to play each other. So their possibility of both getting the max amount of points total between the Cavaliers and the Pirates is not really even possible. So there's still an insane mathematical situation where New Bremen doesn't make the playoffs. But with the fact that they have Delphos St. John, they've played as good of a season that they have. They're currently sitting at the 8th spot. We could see them drop a few spots, but I think New Bremen should be able to get themselves in the playoffs with a win. But once again, you take a look at the seeding and talk about St. Henry, how good they've been this season. I mean, their only loss on the year, their 8-1, was a very close game, a 7-point loss to Marion Local, who has already clinched the number 1 seed in this region and is currently 9-0 and on the longest active winning streak in high school football, and trying to get themselves in the top 5 now when it comes to overall winning streaks in high school football history. So you can't really be too upset if you're St. Henry losing and that being the only loss on the season. You've already clinched the top 4 playoff spots. So good year for St. Henry. We talk about how they've kind of flown under the radar when it comes to the MAC conference. Marion Local, no surprise being the top team. Still some movement that we could see though, but Ansonia as well with their win against Arcanum locks themselves in the playoffs. We talked about them being a team that could slide out if they lose to Arcanum. So big win for the Tigers last night. So still a lot of movement that we could see, and a lot of teams last night locking themselves into the playoffs in this region.
Yeah, one team I want to keep an eye out for is also the Manchester Greyhounds. They are currently 8-1 on the year, but still only in that 11 seed, playing against Fisher Catholic, who's 7-2 on the year. So a potential loss for Manchester, and suddenly you're looking at a 2-loss team that could be out of the picture entirely. Cedarville plays Southeastern, who's currently 0-9 on the year. So if Cedarville gets a win there, they're not too far behind them in terms of the average points. Manchester sitting at a 6.4 right around, and Cedarville hitting at a 6.1. So something to keep in mind for this next week. This next matchup for Cedarville, a huge one for their playoff hopes. Fort Recovery and Minster as well. They play each other. If Minster takes that game, which again they're the higher seed right now, and Minster's played some of the better competition and just out of conference in general. So Fort Recovery, another team, if they lose and Cedarville wins, could be seeing some movement down there. So a lot of movement in that 11 to 13 spots.
Let's go on to Region 24. This is Division 6 here in Southwest Ohio. For Division 6 here in Southwest Ohio, we only have 2 teams that are currently on the outside looking in that still have a chance. Blanchester and Covington as the 14 and 13 seed. Your 4 away teams, Huntington, Deer Park, Dayton Christian, Portsmouth West. Your 4 home teams, Summit Country Day, Rock Hill, Anna, St. Bernard, Elmwood Place. And your 4 teams with a first-round bye, Coldwater, Mechanicsburg, Tri-Village, and Northeastern. Guys, one team I want to talk about here in this region is Dayton Christian. How about they're the 10 seed. They don't currently control their own destiny, but Dayton Christian's been down the past couple of years when it comes to football. So it's nice seeing them back in and having a nice year at 5-4 with the chance to make the playoffs here in Week 10.
Yeah, it's going to be the reason that they don't control their own destiny is the fact that they play Thurgood Marshall next week for their final game of the regular season. Not really too many points, at least when it comes down to everybody else and who they have to play for Dayton Christian to get compared to the rest of the teams inside of this region. Another team you can't forget about, they're all the way down to that 17 spot. They're not out yet. National Trail is not mathematically eliminated yet, but that's because they play Preble Shawnee next week. But that's an easier wins. That's easier said than done for National Trail to take down Preble Shawnee next week. So the Blazers not technically out, but they're going to need a lot of help to just beat Preble Shawnee in the first place to get themselves enough points to even be in the conversation. But obviously they lose, they're done. There's no chance for National Trail to make the playoffs. But yeah, you talk about The other thing that's a little interesting to me when it comes down to it, and it's because they play that other team inside of the MAC that I talked about when I talked about Minster playing St. John's, the fact that Anna faces off against Parkway, who's 0-9 on the season. So it's once again, it was New Bremen that plays Delphos St. John. That's my bad. But Anna, as the 6th seed right now, not in control of their own destiny, is interesting for me to see right now, because with how good the Rockets have been so far this season, sitting at the 6th seed, it's weird seeing when there's realistically 2 to 3 teams on the outside looking in. You sitting at the 6th seed and not being in control of your own destiny or even having clinched a playoff spot is interesting. The other thing I like about this region as well is we're going to see it through a lot of regions that we're going to talk about throughout the remainder of this show. We saw it last in Region 28, talking about Marion Local already locking in the 1 seed, and you've got 2 teams in that region as well outside of Marion Local that have already clinched a home and a bye for the first round. As of right now in Region 24, we have 2 teams that have clinched a home playoff spot. Not even a top 4 seed, not a team clinching the number 1 overall seed. We have Northeastern and Tri-Village have clinched a top 8 seed, and that is all that has happened when it comes to clinching a home spot. Mechanicsburg, Coldwater, St. Bernard, and Elmwood Place have all clinched playoff spots. All 5 of those teams have already locked themselves in. But there's only been 2 teams that have clinched even a top 8 seed. So there's still a lot of possible movement we're going to see inside of this region. And it's going to make watching Region 24 this next week, it's going to make it a lot more fun to see where everything and how everybody slots in to these standings. Because, like I said, we're going to talk about it with other regions. There's going to be teams that have already clinched a first-round bye. There's already teams that have clinched a number 1 seed. There's 2 teams that have clinched a home spot for the first round. So there's a lot of chaos that we could see inside of Region 24.
Yeah, and there's a lot that could happen. I'm taking a look at Covington as well. 5-4. They still play Lehman Catholic, whom, depending on how their game against Riverside goes, could be seeing, a potential momentum loss for the Cavaliers. Covington could take advantage of that. We could see some movement there as well. So other than that, pretty much, like you said, just a lot of stuff that could happen within this region with a lot of teams. No one really clinching a bye either. So a lot of movement that could still happen.
In Region 20, Division 5 here in Southwest Ohio, the first 3 teams that are currently on the outside looking in is Marymount, Versailles, and Waynesville. You also have Madera and Greenon that are currently 16 and 17 right now. If the season were to end today, Purcell Marion would have the 12 seed, West Liberty Salem as the 11, followed by Greenview and then Arcanum as the 9. North Union, Preble Shawnee, Graham Local, Graham East are all your home playoff teams, and your first round byes would be Indian Lake, North College Hill, and Carlisle and Williamsburg. Guys, nobody has clinched a first round bye yet. That's all 4 of those byes are up for grabs here in Week 10. And then, like we talked about a little bit earlier, Arcanum, they play Tri-Village. A loss there could open the door for Waynesville or Versailles if they can pull an upset here in Week 10 to put themselves in the playoffs as well.
And yeah, that's one thing when you take a look at this region as a whole. Versailles at the 14, potentially not even making the playoffs this year. That, to me, with how Versailles has been, not even just last year, but over the past couple seasons, they're a team that has made it all the way to Canton not too long ago. So Versailles with an opportunity, they face off against St. Henry. That's why their total points that they can get is so high. Waynesville, they've got Valley View, so they can get a ton of points if they end up pulling off an upset. Purcell Marion, they have Roger Bacon, so an opportunity to get a decent amount of points there. But it's so interesting seeing Versailles be at the 14 spot going into Week 10 with an opportunity of missing out of the playoffs. That's going to be something. And if we were at 16 teams, obviously the whole who would be in, who would have clinched what, everything would be completely different. But I'm gonna keep this going. If Versailles ends up winning and making it into the playoffs, it's the same situation we see with the MAC every single season. You better hope Versailles is not your opponent in the playoffs, because Versailles has been, and it's not just Versailles, it's the entire MAC conference. They are every single team that makes the playoffs inside of the MAC is a juggernaut of a team. They are always competing against much higher seeded teams if they're in a situation like Versailles is right now, where they could end up being a super low seeded team. But I'm right now looking at Region 20, and if I'm any of these teams that are in the playoffs, if I'm any of these teams that has a first round game, you're hoping St. Henry takes care of business and takes down Versailles next week, because if the Tigers make it into the playoffs, not only is it going to be a MAC school that you got to deal with, but it's going to be a MAC school coming off of a massive win against a very good St. Henry squad that could propel them to get some momentum come playoff time. So if I'm anybody in Region 20 and I'm a bubble team or a team that's already in, I'm hoping Versailles loses next week, because that is a huge team not in the playoffs.
Yeah, also, and just Versailles in general, like you said, that a potential upset team. I look at the rest of this region, I really don't see like a team that is that, dominant force that I could say, hey, they've got enough horses that they could beat Versailles else coming out of the MAC. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And another thing I want to mention Williamsburg, or undefeated, only the 4 seed right now. So should chaos happen and they lose to Bethel Tate, we could see them dropping out of those bye spots entirely. So keep that in mind as well.
Guys, let's go on 16 as well. Region 16, last region before we take another break. When we return, we're talking about Division 3, 2, and 1. Those are regions 12, 8, 4, and 2. In Region 16, the first 3 teams that are out, Urbana, remember, they were on the come up. They got that linebacker back, but a loss last night to Bell Fountain, that could put a little bit of a damper on Urbana's season. They're still not out, but they're still not in. Urbana is the 15, Oakwood is the 14, New Richmond is the 13. Those are your 3 teams out. Kenton Ridge at one point had a home playoff game. They've dropped all the way to the 12 seed. They play London on the road next week. Kenton Ridge is the 12, Taylor is the 11, Bishop Fenwick as the 10, Roger Bacon as the 9. Your home teams are Washington, Brookville, Wyoming, Clinton Massey, and the teams with the bye are Cincinnati Hills Christian Academy, Valley View, Taft, and Indian Hill. Guys, again, the slide that we've seen from Kenton Ridge, they've lost now 3 of their last 4, losing to Bell Fountain, Urbana, and Jonathan Alder. They have a very tough game coming up against London. This was a team that at one point we saw them at a 4-1 record, and they were, I believe, the number 5 seed in this region. Now, granted, that's the reason why we don't talk playoff points halfway through the year, because things like this happen. And Kenton Ridge, a loss, and there's a chance that they're going to be missing the playoffs entirely.
Yeah, it's going to be tough as well for this Cougars team. You talk about a loss, and we might not see them in the playoffs. Well, like I said earlier on in the show, they have London as their Week 10 game. So I think they're going to need a lot going right in their game in Week 10 to take down the Red Raiders. I mean, we talk about the CBC all the time. It's the buzzsaw of London, and then whoever can try their best to put up and make it as close of a game as they can against London. So Kenton Ridge does not have an easy route into the playoffs. They need to, if they can, lose as close as possible to London, and then they would need New Richmond to lose, and if New Richmond were to lose, then that could put them in. There's just so many different scenarios. If Kenton Ridge loses bad, there's a ton of teams all the way down to Bethel Tate at the 18 seed. If Kenton Ridge loses bad, every single team below them that is still a potential team to make the playoffs that isn't mathematically eliminated, that's New Richmond, Oakwood, Urbana, Meadowdale, Northwestern, Bethel Tate. If Kenton Ridge loses bad, every single one of those teams, it is possible with a good enough win to get them enough points to make it in. So Kenton Ridge, they need a lot going right for them to end up, 1, just taking down London, and 2, making it into the playoffs. If they take down London, they're in hands down, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They're a playoff team. But like I said, that is way easier said than done when you've got the Red Raiders as your Week 10 game. The only way they do that, in my opinion, the only way Kenton Ridge wins is if London decides, hey, we made the playoffs, we're going to sit a lot of our starters, and even then London's probably going to put up a ton of points and be a very tough team to beat. So still a lot of craziness that we could see. Indian Hill and Taft have both already clinched the top 4, so they have a bye into that first round of the playoffs. So they're already setting themselves up for a potential deep postseason, but Kenton Ridge, it's going to be tough for them to take down London and potentially get themselves into the playoffs. They need a lot of outside help, in my opinion, to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, a lot and I can't say too much more about this region because a lot hinges on that Kenton Ridge game. You've got Oakwood playing Madison. That should be a win for them. And New Richmond and Wilmington. And again, that's going to be a very tough matchup as well. New Richmond could see them losing that one, but still a lot of stuff that could happen, and really just a lot of it hinging on that Kenton Ridge game.
Time for a break. When we return, we'll take a look at regions 12, 8, 4, and 2. That's all coming up next. Ken Keller from WPKO will be joining us here at 10:15. Jimmie Bell at 10:30. Game picks to close out the show. We're rolling into hour number 3 of this 3-hour show here on the TKDS Sports Network.
A restaurant that only serves chicken fingers was one man's and a dog's dream. They focused on the basics, and all that hard work paid off. Because Cane's puts the dine in dynasty, the yum in triumphant, the feast in undefeasted. This is Raising Cane's, and I'm Kirk Herbstreit, and I'm looking forward to serving you one heck of a chicken finger meal. Now, what can I get you, champ?
I'll take the box combo.
When life gets messy, make it sweet. Only Dirty Dough delivers maximum flavor from the inside-out layers, mix-ins, and gooey fillings. No filters, no fuss, just real cookies for real life. Every week, a rotating lineup of handcrafted flavors. Join the loyalty program, earn points on every purchase, redeem for free cookies, and get a cookie on your birthday. Dirty Dough, it's what's inside that counts.
Looking to elevate your brand with quality custom printing? Red Ball Specialty Printing in Springfield, Ohio. Family owned and dedicated to attention, quality, and service. We customize everything from shirts, drinkware, pens, awards, and more. Whether 50 pieces or 5,000, we deliver color crisp, branding brilliant. From promotional apparel to recognition awards, we're your one-stop for impactful merchandise. Visit rbspdesignschipley.com or call 937-215-0740 today. Red Ball, you think it, they ink it.
When every second counts and every drop matters, you don't settle for ordinary. You power up with Power Mist Racing Fuels. Trusted by champions, engineered for victory. From drag strips to dirt tracks, Power Mist delivers explosive performance, cleaner burns, and unmatched horsepower. Nitro, alcohol, methanol, gasoline blends. Whatever you race, we've got the fuel to ignite your edge. Power Mist Racing Fuels. Born to burn, built to win.
And now, to the TKDS studios and your host, Jackson and Matt, for the Sports Now Update Show.
Back here on the TKDS Sports Network as we welcome you here to the Friday Night Recap Show. We're talking playoff points. Guys, let's go and let's talk about Region 12. We got about 10 minutes before Ken Keller will be joining us. In Region 12, the first 3 teams that are on the outside looking in, you have Hillsborough, Franklin, and Bell Fountain. Bell Fountain with a game against Jonathan Alder this week. Keep in mind, this is a Jonathan Alder team that has struggled a little bit over the past couple of weeks. So Bell Fountain, they've been playing good. Could they sneak in? We'll talk about it here in a minute. Wilmington as the 12, McNicholas as the 11, Bellbrook as the 10, Goshen as the 9. And your home playoff teams would be Chillicothe, Talawanda, Alter, and Jackson. Your first-round buys, Miami Trace, Baden, London, Tippecanoe. You guys already got what I wanted to talk about. Bell Fountain, this is a team that very well could sneak into the playoffs. It's also going to depend on what Wilmington does coming up against New Richmond next week.
Yeah, the team that I want to talk about, and we brought them up when we talked about how big of a win it was for Fenwick last night. I'm taking a look at the Rockets right now. They're in a control-your-own-destiny situation, but they've got a team that's already clinched a top 4 seed in this region in Baden as their final game of the regular season. So McNicholas slid quite a bit with that loss to Fenwick last night. And now they're sitting in a situation where, with a loss to Baden, the best they can get point-wise with a loss, if we see Wilmington win, if we see Bellefontaine win, if we see Franklin win, if we see Batavia win, if two of those three teams that I just mentioned were to just win, they could put themselves in the playoffs over McNicholas. If McNicholas had the best possible loss for themselves, if McNicholas has a bad loss to Baden, Wilmington, Bellefontaine, Franklin, Hillsborough, Batavia, any two of those 5 team win next week, if McNicholas has a bad loss to Baden, McNicholas is out of the playoffs. If any of those two teams that I just mentioned are the 5, Wilmington, Bellefontaine, Franklin, Hillsborough, Batavia, 2 of those 5 win, McNicholas has a bad loss, McNicholas goes from a team that was pretty earlier on in the season, pretty high up there when it comes to where they're at and how they're sitting in the standings and where they're at in this region. If they lose bad to Baden, they could easily be knocked out of the playoffs. So I'm looking at that Fenwick win last night, knocking McNicholas down a peg, and then the fact that they've got Baden, their final game of the regular season. We could see this Rockets team, who I was pretty high on at one point earlier on in the year, we might see them not even make the playoffs in Region 12.
Yeah, and you've talked about the two biggest storylines, that Bellefontaine game, that McNicholas game. Wilmington as well, they're going to be a fairly interesting case. They play New Richmond, a game that's definitely winnable for them. So think about them potentially moving up depending on how that McNicholas game goes. Also look at potentially Franklin. If they can pull off an upset, it would be a big upset, but if they can pull off the upset against Brookville, where does that put them in this picture? It could potentially shoot them up into the playoff picture as well, especially if that Wilmington and New Richmond game is played close. So something else to keep an eye on in that region.
On to Region 8. This is Division 2. Your first 3 teams that are out are Edgewood, Loveland, and Aiken. Loveland, though, does control their own destiny. The last 4 teams in is going to be Stebbins. Stebbins at the 12, Turpin the 11, Butler at the 10, Withrow at the 9. And your home playoff teams would be Piqua, Harrison, Lima Senior, Xenia, with your first-round buys going to LaSalle, Trotwood, Madison, Kings, and Anderson. Guys, Loveland still controls their own destiny. Tough game next week against Anderson. That's why they control their own destiny. I'm looking at that back end. Who's going to sneak into the final spot of the playoffs? Turpin's had a bit of a slide over the last 3 weeks. They've lost now 3 games in a row. They have Milford coming up. How about Stebbins right now? They have Xenia. If Stebbins can pull the upset over Xenia, 7-2 versus 5-4, I think that gives Stebbins a pretty solid chance to get into the playoffs. But again, still with the Loveland controlling their own destiny, there's still a lot up for grabs.
And yeah, the reason Loveland as the 14 seed is in a control your own destiny situation is because if they win, no matter what happens for everybody else, if Loveland wins, they're in. Because the minimum points they can get is 14.05. The max that Turpin and Aiken, the 2 teams that would essentially potentially be knocked out if Loveland wins, the max Aiken can get is 13. The max Turpin can get is 12.15. So Loveland's minimum with the win is 14. And that would jump them to 2 spots they need to make it into the playoffs. So that's why Loveland is sitting at a control your own destiny situation as the 14 spot, because if they win, it is mathematically impossible for them to miss the playoffs. But they've got to face off against a team that is looking to put up 500 points in the regular season in Anderson next week. So it's another situation of way easier said than done for Loveland to take down Anderson, but that's why Loveland is the 14 seed, is in a control of their own destiny. Win, no matter what happens anywhere else, they are in the playoffs.
Yeah, and Stebbins, that game against Xenia, that's going to be, if they end up losing that one, you have to think Aiken could potentially take advantage of that. They play a 4-5 Hughes team. That could be a win for Aiken, and so all of a sudden you can see them jump up into the playoffs. So, really a lot of these teams under Loveland, I don't see them getting too much movement from their games. Edgewood plays a 2-7 Monroe. Fairborn plays a 5-4 Butler, but they're still they have less than 6 points when the 12 seed is currently at an 8.3. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. Belmont plays a 1-8 Ponets. opponents, a lot of these opponents in the 15 seed and down, I don't quite see them getting enough playoff points to get in. But Aiken, that game against Hughes is suddenly going to be a massive deal, because if Stebbins loses to Xenia, which I think that's probably going to happen. I think Xenia's got a lot of talent to pull off the win against Stebbins. And I think that Aiken team could see that Aiken Hughes game is going to be a massive one for playoff implications.
On to Region 4, Division 1, with first three teams that are out: West Claremont, Little Miami, Walnut Hills, and then your teams that are in: Western Hills, Oak Hills, Hamilton, Fairfield, Mason's going to start your home teams. Lakota East, Lakota West, Winton Woods, some of the other home teams. And then your first round byes: Princeton, Moeller, St. Xavier, and Elder. Guys, the biggest battle right now, again, is that back end. Hamilton, with that win, really threw some things off last night. So there's still a lot up for grabs. In fact, seeds 9 through 12 still have not clinched a playoff spot, and seeds 13 through 16 have still not been mathematically eliminated. So you look at it, you have 8 teams, who are really battling it out for the final 4 spots.
And yeah, one of those teams that it doesn't say they control their own destiny, and it's because they play Coleraine in their final game of the season, but you talk about a swing for teams, especially this late in the regular season. Hamilton with that win last night against Middletown. I know we're going to talk about Region 2. I'll jump ahead and say it. We talked about it already. Middletown is currently the number 1 seed in Region 2. That's why that win for Hamilton last night was such a big game for the Big Blue. They don't control their own destiny, but that's just because of the amount of points it's possible for them to get in the game against Coleraine. If they get their best win possible against Coleraine, if they put up as much as they can and do everything they need to do to win convincingly, they lock themselves in. It's the conversation of if they win by a point against Coleraine, and then Oak Hills, Walnut Hills, Western Hills all absolutely destroy their opponents in their Week 10 games, which for 2 of those teams, it's very tough to do that. But that's why Hamilton doesn't control their own destiny right now. But if they get a convincing enough win, which they should against Coleraine. Colerane's mathematically eliminated, hasn't had that good of a season. They're 1-8 on the year. If Hamilton gets a good enough win, and a win that they should be getting against Coleraine, they've pretty much locked themselves into the playoffs. But like I said, I'm going to talk about that win last night against Middletown. A huge surge in points for Hamilton because of that win puts them in a situation now where they just need to win by 15 to 20 or so points, and they're probably into the playoffs guaranteed.
Yeah, another couple of teams I'm looking at. I'm looking at Western Hills at that 12 seed. They play a Withrow Tigers team who's only lost 2 games to LaSalle and to Taft. They've been rolling past pretty much everybody else. So a game that could see a pretty wide margin if Western Hills manages to lose that game. And the other team I'm looking at is Little Miami. They play West Claremont. They'd have to beat them by a lot. Don't get me wrong. They need to do a lot for themselves. The Little Miami Panthers need to do a lot for themselves again in their game against West Claremont. But if they manage to put a big enough margin of victory, considering the way that Western Hills game could go, if that turns into a blowout, we could see Little Miami finally make that jump into the 12th spot.
And last but not least, we're not going to pay too much attention to this because we really have all season. I feel like this is probably the region we've talked about the most. It's Region 2, a 15 seed Beaver Creek, Marysville, and Hilliard-Darby. Those are the first 3 teams that are out. Your away teams: Hilliard-Davidson is the 12. Fairmont is in their playoff picture for the first time this entire season. They're the 11 seed. Westland has 10, Jerome has the 9. Your home teams would be Bradley, Wayne, Lebanon, and Springboro. Springfield, Findlay, Troy, and Middletown, those last 4 teams I just mentioned, they get your first round bye. I am just going to throw my time over to the man that's sitting in the middle, and that's Matt right now, because actually there's so much that's happening between seeds 9 through really 16 in this region that I couldn't figure it out on my own. I actually called Matt last night so that we could kind of discuss it out together, and he got it pretty much ironed down pat. So Matt, be my guest. You have the floor, partner.
Let's just say I've talked about it every single time we talked about Region 2. There is still a lot of chaos and a lot of stuff that can happen that wouldn't make any sense, but it is possible for it to happen. So the whole big what-if scenario that's going on inside of this region, you've got Fairmont at the 11. They face off against Beaver Creek, who's at the 15. And then you've got Hilliard-Darby, currently the first team out, facing off against Marysville, who is currently the second team out. And then you have Hilliard-Davidson facing off against Upper Arlington, a very, very, very tough opponent for Hilliard-Davidson to take down. And the whole conversation we were having, Jackson and I both went to Fairmont. We both want to see Fairmont make it. Jackson actually has younger brother Jacob playing tight end at Fairmont, so he's got a little bit of, I kind of want to see Fairmont win that game, but he was asking me because a lot of family members were trying to figure things out.
We try to be as most unbiased on this show as possible, especially me.
100%.
It gets a little hard to do sometimes when family's involved, for sure.
Exactly, and you were talking about how you've got a lot of family members that are probably going to be asking you throughout the week about the whole, can Fairmont make the playoffs? What's the situation like? What it boils down to for Fairmont, if they get a convincing win, a good enough win, should lock them into the playoffs. Even if they get a very, very close win, it comes down to the Hilliard-Darby versus Marysville game. And if Fairmont were to, say, beat Beaver Creek by 3, they would pretty much need Marysville to win the game against Hilliard-Darby. Because if Hilliard-Darby absolutely beats the brakes off of Marysville, they can get to 12.75 points. Fairmont, with a bad win against Beaver Creek, can only get to 12.69. So they would be out by 0.06 points. So there's still some movement, still some. I mean, it's been like that all season for this region too. So there's still a lot of craziness that can happen. I mean, Centerville, they've got Wayne their next game with Centerville, with a lot of craziness going on between Hilliard-Darby and Marysville, and if Hilliard-Davidson loses it all and Centerville wins big, that could put Centerville over Hilliard-Davidson, so they're still not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs yet themselves. It's safe to say when it comes to this region, it's the same thing we've said all year. There's just chaos, 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 and then you got to add 15 more chaoses after that to make it even a possibility that you're right talking about Region 2, but there's just a lot of different scenarios. Fairmont just needs to get a convincing win to lock themselves in the playoffs. They don't control their own destiny because of all the other Hilliard-Darby versus Marysville, Hilliard-Davidson being a game behind them, facing off against a better opponent than Fairmont has next week, the fact that Fairmont faces Beaver Creek, who's the 15. I'll just sum it up to this. Week 10, same thing that we've been talking about for Region 2 all season. A lot of craziness can happen, a lot of chaos can happen, and there is absolutely no way in any shape or fashion that you could say, oh yeah, this team is, unless you've already clinched a playoff spot, if you're from the 9 seed down inside of Region 2 and you still have a mathematical chance of making it, realistically, you cannot say that you are guaranteed a playoff spot. That's all I got to say about Region 2. It is going to be chaos in Week 10.
I mean, you've pretty much ironed out the whole division right then and there. I mean, it's at this point where I wish I had graphics control, because I would totally put up the meme from Always Sunny in Philadelphia where the guy is freaking out over and has the massive conspiracy theory board, because that's exactly what this region is right now. So
that's how I felt talking right there.
Yeah, that's all I mean, there's really not much else to say other than what you did. You summed it up pretty well, Matt.
Oh boy, Region 2, so much fun to talk about all season long, and this time when we're talking about it next week, we'll actually know who is in and who is out of the 2025 playoffs. Hard to believe we're already in the final week of the regular season. With that being said, once again, all those playoff points, unofficial, but brought to you by Joe Idol, and basically when we mention his name, it's basically official, just without the OHSAA mark by it, although OHSAA even still uses him as well for a lot of things. So, worthy points. It's almost always correct, Joe Idol. Again, a huge shout out to you. We're going to take a break. Joining us on the flip side of this commercial will be Ken Keller from our partner, Peak of Ohio TV and WPKO. He'll be talking about some of the games he was at last night and some of the CBC and OHE matchups that's upcoming in Week 10 as well. That's all coming up next and more on Sports Now, the Friday Night Recap Show.
The year was 1907. The Cubs won the World Series and the Ford Model R hit the assembly line. While here in Ohio, school administrators came together to form the Ohio High School Athletic Association. One thing that hasn't changed since 1907 is the dedication of the OHSAA to education-based athletics in Ohio. School sports teach responsibility, sportsmanship, and life lessons that stay with students long after their playing days are over. The OHSAA seeks to prepare students not for the next level of sport, but for the next level of life.
In communities where leaders are forged and legacies are born, the Southern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference proudly celebrates the accomplishments of current and former students. From the playing field to the boardroom, they are the next generation of entrepreneurs, doctors, and executives.
Leaders rise here. Leaders rise here.
Leaders rise here.
Leaders rise here.
This game just got bigger. That's how we do it, fellas. And better.
The energy is contagious.
Because we're back.
It's still a party here on HBCU Go.
And this season, it's about the grit. Unbelievable. The glory.
This conference is anybody's to take.
And the clash of champions.
Every game is our championship game.
The 2025 HBCU Go football season is coming this fall. Only on HBCU Go.
Central State University is home.
We on the way, know that. Yeah, it's my time. Who I'm gonna be when I'm in the limelight. Shining in the dark like I was a nightlight. It's my time, yeah. I went from the back to front, last to one. Future looking like man of us. We on the way, know that. We on the way, know that.
For God.
For Central.
For State.
And now, to the TKDS studios and your host, Jackson and Matt for the Sports Now Update Show.
Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington, Jonathan Snyder, as we welcome you back here to the Friday Night Recap Show. Joining us now is our good friend Ken Keller from Peak of Ohio TV, radio station WPKO. Ken, thanks for joining us. We made this a weekly occasion throughout the 2025 high school football season. We hope to carry it on through playoffs, and hard to believe that we're already talking Week 9 football and getting set for Week 10 next week.
Yeah, it's a little bittersweet, honestly. You know, it's an exciting part of the year, but then just to know that next week's the last regular season week of the year, and then you just never know how long your season's going to go as far as a broadcaster goes. It makes me sad. But then high school basketball on the way. Well, we'll find something new to go for. But this is Christmas right now as far as just how fun this is to follow. And these games, I feel like even more this year than in years past, means something, certainly in Logan and Champaign County. There's still so much up in the air.
You mentioned basketball, and it's funny, I started my basketball planning this upcoming week, building our schedules of the games we're covering with TKDS Sports, starting to kind of prep what this show is going to look like come basketball season as well. And hard to believe, actually, college games tip off here. I think our first college game on the network is just 12 days from now. So it's hard to believe that this season's already flown by as quick as it's been. But as you mentioned, it's like Christmas morning right now, especially for us media folk who get paid to talk about this stuff. A lot going on, a lot to sort out. The OHSAA shifting from a 16-team playoff to 12-team playoff have made things in races so much more interesting this season. And not just one region, but every region. And you talked about how there's a lot of implication and a lot of things that are undecided up in Champaign and Logan County. Kind of go on and talk about that if you could.
Yeah, you broke up a little bit there, Jackson, but I think I got the gist of what you were saying. I wasn't really in favor of going down to 12 teams. Most people are. I get that. I prefer to have more teams in the playoffs. That's fun. At the end of the year, teams 12 spots, but fighting for the top 4 so they can get that first week bye has made. Last night, my game in Champaign County was Mechanicsburg hosting Northeastern. 2 teams 7-1, 2 teams in the same division of the OHC, And Northeastern came out and dominated that game, and that has huge implications. Mechanicsburg was the number 1 team in the region. Now they're going to be fighting next week in a big game against West Liberty-Salem that I'll also have, to even get a top 4, ranking for a bye week. And now Northeastern in the driver's seat for that number 1 seed and in a bye. So, I mean, things flipped so quickly in week 9 based off that one game, and we'll have even more of that next week.
Ken, one thing we were talking about a little bit earlier on in this show was what has happened to Kenton Ridge over the past couple of weeks. This is a Kenton Ridge team that has now lost 3 of their last 4 games, and their playoff hopes basically now lie on beating London next week.
Yeah, I don't like their chances. I don't like anybody's chances against London. They've shut out their teams 5 weeks in a row. I don't know if you've kept track with that, but that defense hasn't allowed a point in over a month, which is just insane. As far as Kenton Ridge goes, now, I have not seen them this year, and I'm trying to think if I even had them in a game last year. I think I had them 1 game last year. So I'm not a real authority on the Cougars. What I will say, looking at their score or their schedules in the CBC, they seem to be a team that, they win the games they're supposed to, struggle in the tests, teams that are equal to or maybe considered stronger than them. And that's really the next step that they need to make, in their development, in their progress. Again, I'm not an expert with Kenton Ridge. I've only seen them once in the past 2 years. So that's just my outsider, look at what's been going on with Kenton Ridge.
Talk to us about some other teams that up there in Champaign, Logan County, your area of coverage, that could be on the outside looking in or took a tough loss last night that'll officially get them out or got a big win last night that puts them up. What's some of the other big movement that we've seen up in your area over the last night?
Well, two games come to mind. West Liberty-Salem, that was a tough loss last night against West Jefferson. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out and what the implications are for next week. They host Mechanicsburg, but they were winning that game at halftime. It was close, but West Jefferson, I think I read somewhere, got 13 unanswered late in the game to pull away in that one. That certainly help their chances by any means, but did hurt their chances. Bell Fountain, huge win last night against Urbana. Now, the Urbana win, that doesn't itself do a lot to move the needle a whole lot. But what it does is it sets up next week where I believe if they win, they're in on the road at Jonathan Alder. So a huge profile game for Bell Fountain week 10 as they will, win and give themselves a chance to get into the playoffs, which, a few weeks ago when Carter Caudill went down with the broken leg, their leading rusher and best linebacker as well, I don't think a lot of us thought that they would have this chance. But those kids, got to give them credit. They've leaned into their new roles. They've faced the adversity, and now they've given themselves a chance to play in the postseason, which, a few weeks ago, not a lot of us thought that they would have.
Ken, kind of talking and touching base about that same Bell Fountain squad. This is a team that's been playing really good football. They've won 3 of their last 4 games. This is really where you want to be playing your best football heading into the postseason. You look at that Jonathan Alder squad, and if I'm being completely honest with you, Ken, Jonathan Alder, they're 8-1. They're a great team. But I don't think that they're playing their best football right now. A 2-point win last night over Kenton Ridge. They got blanked against London. Granted, that's London. Only a 7-point victory over Urbana, and frankly, a game that Urbana probably should have won. I know that we talked about that a few weeks ago. Their main linebacker was back and those sort of things. But Jonathan Alder, when you look at how they've played the last couple weeks, even that game against Tecumseh, they won it 31-7, but you could just tell that they weren't clicking on all cylinders in that game. That kind of worries me a little bit for Jonathan Alder, and that could be plus for the Chieftains of Bell Fountain.
Yeah, well, 2 things on that. First of all, I had that game against Urbana. That was kind of the start of what you're talking about right now, and they won that game. So, it's a win is a win. Also, I think they're playing their toughest part of the schedule at this point, as well. So, the scores are going to be closer. They're going to be, in tighter games. And then, of course, we talked about London, and nobody plays well, against that team, it seems. I don't really have too many worry. I think Coach Glass is an outstanding coach. I think he's going to have those kids ready to play. They will not be in that is a home game next week against Bellefontaine, so they're going to be up for it. I'm not sure what their playoff implications are. I haven't dived into that too much, but it's a tough place to play. They are a really good team. They do a lot of things well as far as running and how they're able to deceive on who gets the ball, and they've got good receivers as well. So and again, Coach Glass, he'll have them ready to go. I'm not too worried about that.
Jonathan Alder currently right now, they're in Region 15, one of the regions we haven't talked about a whole lot on this show. They're the 2 seed right now. With the win, you could clinch. With the win, no other way around it, you're clinching a first-round bye, so that is going to be a huge game coming up for Jonathan Alder as well. Ken, kind of talk to us about any other notes that you had. You're a little bit more of your game last night, some other games to watch out for coming up into Week 10.
Yeah, two games I want to touch on from last night. One, my game, I was very surprised. Northeastern dominated Mechanicsburg in a way that the Indians haven't seen this year or too many times in the past few years. That game was in Mechanicsburg, and Cody Houseman, one of the best running backs in the OHC, he had 180-plus yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. And I haven't looked at what the rushing numbers overall were for Northeastern last night, but they had to approach 300 if they didn't go over it. And Mechanicsburg, who's going into that game, had only given up 95 points all year, and 43 of those were to Urbana. So if you take out the Urbana game going into last night, they give up like 6.5 points a game. So it's an outstanding defense, and Northeastern rolled last night. So I was really surprised by that, impressed by the Jets. And I know Coach Kurt Forrest for Mechanicsburg is, we might want to leave him alone for a day or so because he's probably livid, about what he saw from the defense. And they've got a big game against West Liberty Salem next week to solidify their playoff seeding. And also that's one of the biggest rivals in Champaign County too. Those teams, doesn't matter what the record is, when those two teams play, they really go at it. But the game I really wanted to touch on, I actually have it on in front of me right now on Peak of Ohio TV, is Graham and Indian Lake. The Falcons last night at home were 7-1 going into that game. The Lakers 6-2. The Falcons led the entire way until the fourth quarter when the Lakers were able to put together a couple of scores. They scored 2 touchdowns in the final 5 minutes to squeeze a win in Falconland. They win that one in St. Paris to win that one 24-21. It's the second week in a row that the Lakers have had to win in the last minutes on the road too. And a little controversy on the last play of the game. It looked like Graham was going to have the go-ahead, the game-winning touchdown, at least an opportunity, but there was an inadvertent whistle that stopped the play and they actually ended the game. They didn't even redo the play or anything like that. And there was a lot of upset Falcon fans, coaches, players, helmets were being thrown. It was a little bit of a dark spot on how that game ended, but in bottom line, the Lakers won that game 24-21, and very entertaining. And again, the Lakers just continue to do what the Lakers do. They just chug along. They win these close games. You don't know how they do some of these, but they do. And right now they are 7-2 and positioning themselves really nice in the playoff picture.
Well, once again, as always, that's our good friend Ken Keller from WPKO, Peak of Ohio TV, one of our sister stations here on the TKDS Sports Network. Ken, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you next week. And next weekend, we're going to have a full-blown picture of what the playoff seeding is going to be looking like.
Yeah, excited for that. Wanted to see where, I want to know where I'm going. Week 11, on Halloween night, where am I going to be? That's always a fun. I love going to see different venues. And it's the best time of the year for sure.
Yeah, I think that all of us on this show are a little too old to go trick-or-treating now, so you can catch us at a football game calling it in Week 11. Ken, once again, thank you.
Yeah, take care, Jackson.
Our good friend, Ken Keller. We're going to take a break. When we return, our other good friend, Jimmie Bell, Columbus analyst, will be joining us here on the network as well, where we go over OCC scores. That's all coming up next on Sports Now.
When life gets messy, make it sweet. Only Dirty Dough delivers maximum flavor from the inside-out layers, mix-ins, and gooey fillings. No filters, no fuss, just real cookies for real life. Every week, a rotating lineup of handcrafted flavors. Join the loyalty program, earn points on every purchase, redeem for free cookies, and get a cookie on your birthday. Dirty Dough, it's what's inside that counts.
Hey, really appreciate you treating us to Canes today, Todd.
Hey, anything from my favorite TV personality. Oh, and Kirk Herbstreit.
Hey, I'm used to it. Hey, you know Canes is our favorite pregame meal. Nothing like kicking off game day with hand-battered cooked-to-order chicken fingers and cane sauce.
Speaking of the game, we gotta get back soon. What's the holdup?
Yeah, what's that noise?
Hello? Hello, anyone there?
We're gonna miss the tailgate.
This is the tailgate.
Raising Cane's chicken fingers.
One love.
Looking to elevate your brand with quality custom printing? Red Ball Specialty Printing in Springfield, Ohio. Family owned and dedicated to attention, quality, and service. We customize everything from shirts, drinkware, pens, awards, and more. Whether 50 pieces or 5,000, we deliver color crisp, branding brilliant. From promotional apparel to recognition awards, we're your one-stop for impactful merchandise. Visit rbspdesignschipley.com or call 937-215-0740 today. Red Ball, you think it, they ink it.
And now, to the TKDS studios and your host, Jackson and Matt for the Sports Now Update Show.
Back here on the TKDS Sports Network, Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington and Jonathan Snyder. Before we introduce our good friend Jimmie Bell, let's go over some Columbus scores. Newark beating Reynoldsburg 35-21. Pickerington Central over Thames Valley 49-17. Canal Winchester beating Lancaster 42-0. Groveport Madison beating Logan 44-13. Westland over Delaware Hayes 24-17. Big Wanna beating Dublin Scioto 35-6. Worthington Kilburn over Westerville North 34-17. Westerville South beating Harvest Prep in overtime 29-28. Olentangy over Dublin Jerome 35-31. We saw Olentangy Berlin over Marysville 41-7. Hilliard Darby over Thomas Worthington 29-12. Olentangy Orange over Hilliard Bradley 38-14. Liberty over Davidson 21-7. Upper Arlington over Dublin Kaufman 42-7. Pick North over New Albany 35-7. Gahanna Lincoln beating Grove City 44-20. And Westerville Central blanking Central Crossing 30-0. With that being said, we welcome in our good friend, TKDS analyst, former Ohio State Buckeye. It's the man, the myth, the legend, Jimmie Bell. Jimmy, you there?
You went out on me for a quick second. Jackson, I got you back.
There you go. There we go. See, if you had an iPhone, we went over this last week. We could do a video. We could do a Wi-Fi call.
See, I understand where you're coming from, but I may consider getting my first phone like everyone else out there. You know what I'm saying?
We could do a FaceTime audio.
iPhone.
We could do a FaceTime audio that would make things a little bit easier with the service. We can connect that to Wi-Fi. Jimmy, thanks for joining us. Happy Saturday morning. I know your Buckeyes have a big game coming up today. You weren't actually calling a Columbus game yesterday. You were at that Kenton Ridge-Jonathan Alder matchup last night. But talk to us a little bit about what you've been seeing in Columbus just being around the area.
You know, Columbus is it's a battle this year, man. It's really awesome to see how the teams are fighting. I think probably more than another high school aficionado, Columbus High School aficionado would have to tell me, but I haven't seen it this close in quite some time. You have a lot of teams that are in the running. Yeah, you got your big dogs. You got your Pick North. You got your Olentangy Orange. You got your Pick Central back in the mix. You got your Big Walnuts. But these secondary schools, man, your Worthington Kilbournes, your Canal Winchesters, your Lyndon McKinleys, man, Liberty, Olentangy Liberty's getting the wins that they deserve. You know, they started off pretty tough, but they played a tough competition. You know, so it's pretty exciting to see everyone. Even the game we called last night at Kitten Ridge against Jonathan Holder, watching these teams, they're literally fighting and racing for their point position in Ohio high school playoffs.
And Jimmy, we've talked about this between us three here on the show. I kind of want to get your thoughts on this as well. The OHSAA, they moved it to everybody makes the playoffs during COVID. After COVID, they made it 16 teams, which was double the amount than what they had pre the COVID-19 pandemic. Now this is the first year that they've minimized it from 16 down to 12, and you're seeing some teams that have made the playoffs in the years past, who have been dominant teams in playoffs of the years past, but you lose a couple seniors, and you can't start off the season 0-2, 0-3, 0-4 like some of these teams are. They catch their stride late, and then it's too late for them to make the playoffs. A lot of those teams, though, are still fighting to back their way in and get a lower seed in the playoffs. Do you think that the OHSA shifting from 16 teams down to 12 teams is accounting for a lot of this?
Yeah, of course. That's where we used to be. And it's not just wins and losses. It's wins and losses based upon who you play per your division, right? If you're a Division I team, you can't afford to lose any games, period, because the points go against you. If you lose against a smaller team, it's going to knock you way out. But a privilege that I've had coming from Youngstown, Ohio, playing for Youngstown Ursuline, even though we've been prolific and we had a lot of really dope players every year, we were still middle of the road. So we used to beat the big, good Division I teams. So even if we lost a game or two or three or sometimes even four, we would still get it. So the point system, I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but I will say this, man. That COVID year, I thought it was dope. That's just Jimmie Bell. It was so different from what we're used to, but the fact that everyone got in and they had an opportunity to play, and then the teams had an opportunity to continue with their season, I thought that was one of the dopest things because it panned out anyway, but you also gave teams an opportunity. You really gave a true opportunity to get the best matchups at the end of those runs.
Jimmy, a couple of some of the bigger games that we see next week in Columbus. It happens in a region we've talked about all year, Region 2. That I think has probably been the most competitive region that we've seen. That's your mix between some Columbus and some Dayton teams. Hilliard-Davidson going up against Upper Arlington. Upper Arlington, they're Division I Region 3, and they're sitting really nice within that Division I Region 3 as the number 7 seed. They've already clinched a spot. They're looking to clinch home field or a home game in Week 1. So Upper Arlington not to be taken lightly. Davidson as the 12 seed, it's as simple as this for them. You win, you're in. For Hilliard-Davidson, you lose, you're going to need some help to make sure that you can stay within that playoff race and playoff picture. What do you know about that matchup between Upper Arlington and Davidson next week?
Classic. You know, you got your classic Central Ohio team. You got the same thing. You got your Hilliard-Davidson. They're a little, even though they're consistent, they go up and down consistently. But the dope part about it, and everyone always on TKDS always hears me talk about the identity of a team and a program. They are the quintessential of that because even though they may not be as good one year, they're going to continue to do the same things. Upper Arlington is just a well-coached team. They do a really good job of coaching what they have. They do a really good job. So Upper Arlington is going to do good against the solid really good teams that are solid. They have a little difficulty when they come up against a little bit more of an athletic team that has more of a solid foundation. But I think it's probably one of those perfect physical matchups that I always talk about. I love the matchups when I look at it on the field. If I don't know either team, I can physically say this is a pretty even matchup, and then let's go ahead and watch everybody battle for the victory. So that's what you're going to find next week.
Jimmy, another big matchup in that same region. You have 13-seed Hilliard Darby going up against 14-seed Marysville. Now, winner of that game, if Davidson or Fairmont loses in Week 10, then the winner of that game could sneak in and take over that number 12 seed. So although those two teams are on the outside looking in, and even if one of those teams were to win, it still does not solidify them in. They need one of the teams in front of them to lose. But that game has a lot of playoff implications as well, especially if Davidson can't beat Upper Arlington or if Fairmont can't take down Beaver Creek.
Super interesting game. I called the Marysville game a couple weeks ago, and they're one of those programs too. Now, they don't necessarily have the guys that they're used to having, but they're always going to have a really good, strong running back. I think Hilliard is going to have a little bit more from a big play perspective, but they still got to get past what I saw as a pretty tough and consistent defense. But again, we're in a place where a lot of these teams, they look the same. There's not a lot of discrepancy in the physical prowess and the athleticism. So really, what they're gonna throw that ball out in the middle of the field and see who's going to be hungrier and who wants it more.
Jimmy, give us your top three teams. It doesn't matter what division, what region, your top three teams in Columbus this season to look out for, and your teams that you think are going to be playing in Canton here later on.
Oh, geez, great question. And I'm not going to give any particular order, but Olentangy Orange. Oh, pick North, and my pick Central people, don't be mad at me. I'm just saying, but they beat y'all. So I got a text yesterday about the best quarterback and why isn't the Pickerington Central quarterback being looked at with all of these other quarterbacks. I told that person, I said, Levi Davis, I think, is the best, most dynamic quarterback probably in Ohio. Then the guy sends me these stats, and the stats look similar. He looks right along like everyone else is with the good quarterbacks. But nonetheless, they got beat, so I can't put them up. I wouldn't necessarily put them up there in my top three. And I'm going to be honest with you, bro. I loved watching Big Walnut. They look like a complete physical team. Are they going to call the plays and execute? I think they can, bro. They got an incredible quarterback. They have a dynamic running back, and they have several big play wide receivers, and they have a tight end that's pretty good. I think he's going to a pretty big school, but he's pretty good. So they have all the makeup. So if you told me to do three, off the top of my head, those will be my three.
Well, Jimmy, once again, thank you as always. It's great to talk to you. And actually, before we let you go, I if I'm not mistaken, I know that the Bucks play today at 3:30. If I'm not mistaken, your Ohio State Buckeyes pregame show's coming back today on the network as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do a show on Fox and ABC. I'm 9:15 every single Saturday, so you guys can check that out on Fox and ABC. TKDS, we're bringing back our pregame show with Doug Worthington and myself. Kevy Kev is feeling better. So everyone on the TKDS, meet us between 2 o'clock and 2:30. I think the game is at 3:30 is where it's at 3.
3:30.
Then come see us at 2:30. We're going to be up and back popping. Cam got the soreness out of his toes, and we're going to be rocking. So we're excited to be back with the station.
Well, Jimmy, once again, best of luck to you on your show. If you guys can't make it out in person, watch it live at the TKDS Sports Network, 2:30, and then a halftime show where whenever halftime is for that Buckeyes game. Jimmy, once again, thanks for joining us. Hopefully we see a Buckeyes win later today.
We most certainly will. You can put your money on Vegas and that if you're a betting man.
Jimmie Bell, thanks again. We'll talk to you next week.
Appreciate everybody. Much love.
That's Jimmie Bell, TKDS analyst for Columbus, former Ohio State Buckeye as well, host of the Jimmie Bell pregame show with Doug Worthington. That show will air today at 2:30, so make sure to check that out. Final 10 minutes of the show. We have one more commercial break to get in. When we return, we'll go over our Week 10 game picks. That's all coming up next on the Friday Night Recap Show, powered by TKDS Sports.
When life gets messy, make it sweet. Only Dirty Dough delivers maximum flavor from the inside-out layers, mix-ins, and gooey fillings. No filters, no fuss, just real cookies for real life. Every week, a rotating lineup of handcrafted flavors. Join the loyalty program, earn points on every purchase, redeem for free cookies, and get a cookie on your birthday. Dirty Dough, it's what's inside that counts.
A restaurant that only serves chicken fingers was one man's and a dog's dream. They focused on the basics, and all that hard work paid off. Because Cane's puts the dine in dynasty, the yum in triumphant, the feast in undefeasted. This is Raising Cane's, and I'm Kirk Herbstreit, and I'm looking forward to serving you one heck of a chicken finger meal. Now, what can I get you, champ?
I'll take the box combo.
Looking to elevate your brand with quality custom printing? Red Ball Specialty Printing in Springfield, Ohio. Family owned and dedicated to attention, quality, and service. We customize everything from shirts, drinkware, pens, awards, and more. Whether 50 pieces or 5,000, we deliver color crisp, branding brilliant. From promotional apparel to recognition awards, we're your one-stop for impactful merchandise. Visit rbspdesignschipley.com or call 937-215-0740 today. Red Ball, you think it, they ink it.
Looking for future leaders we can believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Ohio. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It includes learning to listen, accepting responsibility, being a good role model, and it's about respect. The result, it transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. This message presented by the Ohio High School Athletic Association and the Ohio Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
And now, to the TKDS studios and your host, Jackson and Matt, for the Sports Now Update Show.
You know, a little bit more housekeeping here before we close up shop and go into our game picks. Every time that it says now back to the TKDS studios with Jackson and Matt, I always get the urge to unmute myself and just talk over it and go, and John. That's the way that we could fix it. Also,
would
I've
be
been thinking
deeply
we
funny.
were kind of running a little bit behind in the show, so I couldn't necessarily mention it this time. I've been thinking since 8 o'clock this morning that I'm the only one out of us three that didn't get the hat memo. You guys could have let me know, and we could have all twinned, or whatever it's called if three people are twinning together.
Jackson, you know me. If you see me without a hat, it's like spotting Bigfoot. So you should have
true.
already known that I was
That
going to be
is
wearing a
very
hat
true.
today. So
Same with me. Like I've worn a hat pretty much every time I've been on the show, man.
Really?
I think every single time Jackson
I think that
sees
just
me, I have a
tells
hat
you
on.
how much I pay attention, I guess.
Yeah, if you're only just now noticing it.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Today's show is all brought to you
Anyway.
by Dirty Dough, the PAL location. Visit them off Sawmill Parkway, right here or right there in Columbus. It's what's inside that counts. Tell them your good friends TKDS Sports Network sent you. Red Ball Specialty Printing. You think it, they ink it. Visit them off Deer Road in Springfield, Ohio, for all of your specialty printing needs. custom apparel, novelties, and more. And then Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers, one love. Some Saturday games coming up today. Lehman Catholic, Riverside, Moeller, St. Edward, Cincinnati College Prep Academy, and Gamma Montessori, the 3 games that are left to play. Guys, about 5 minutes left in this show. We have 6 game picks. We're going around the table, and as always, we're just name the name, say a sentence on why, and that's how we're getting on. But before we start that, I mean, the standings with the game picks this year, absolutely incredible. Kyle Funk, a play-by-play guy for the TKDS Sports Network, leading the way, 38-14. I had a 6-0 week. That moves me from second to last to second, 37-15. I had to say that. Tim Capel, Jonathan Snyder, David Marshall, and Matt Pennington, all analysts on the network. They are all tied for third at a 36-16, and Gabe Payne, another play-by-play guy for the network, 34-18. In fact, that's now back-to-back weeks where he's slid off, and he was in first at one point. Just a few weeks later, he's down to 7th. So, guys, let's get into it. Meadowdale versus Dunbar. I'll kick it off. Give me Meadowdale. They got that win last year. They're playing some good football. I like Meadowdale.
Yeah, I'm on the Meadowdale boat as well in this game. I mean, both teams have struggled at times this year. Meadowdale, though, very tough out-of-conference competition. They've looked good so far this season compared to Dunbar. So, give me the Lions.
Yeah, I'm taking a look at similar matchups. Meadowdale has beaten the same opponents that Dunbar has, but Meadowdale's kept it a wider margin of victory. Give me Meadowdale on this one.
Up next, Coldwater at Marion Local.
I've said it once. I've said it twice. I've probably said it 100 times at this point. Marion Local is going to have to lose to somebody for me to pick against them, so give me the Flyers.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost like the Kansas City Chiefs at this point. I'm not going to pick against them unless they show me otherwise, I am not picking against them because there's some type of things that could go, their way. Hey, give me Marion Local in this one.
I have an urge to pick against them, guys, but I did it one time 4 years ago, and it cost me the championship that year. Since then, I vowed to never vote against Marion Local until they prove me otherwise. I'm sticking to that word. Give me the Flyers. This is a game Coldwater can win, and it would not shock me if they do, but I'm going with Marion Local instead. Hilliard-Davidson at Upper Arlington.
Give me Upper Arlington in this one. Hilliard-Davidson's been sliding lately. I think they've lost their last 4. So with momentum not on their side, give me Upper Arlington at home.
Give me Upper Arlington. They're home. I think that they've been playing better football.
I agree. Give me Upper Arlington. Like John said, Davidson's sliding a little bit. Upper Arlington has slid a little bit since their insanely good start to the season, but Golden Bears have looked incredible so far this year, so give me Upper Arlington.
Up next, Lehman Catholic at Covington. Guys, I talked to one of our TKDS's good friends, Jim DeBelt, last night and this morning. He mentioned Lehman Catholic's legit. Give me Lehman Catholic in this one. I'm trusting Jim's word. If I lose, I'm blaming him.
You know what? I'm going to say the same thing. I didn't hear him say it, but I'm going to agree with and hope that he told you the truth. Give me Lehman Catholic and the Cavaliers.
I feel like this is a pick that could be switched depending on how they play against Riverside. As of right now, give me Lehman Catholic, but that Riverside game could change a lot.
Up next, Lakota East, Lakota West. Give me Lakota West is on the road. Give me West. I think that they've been playing solid, more solid as of late.
You took me going first. Give me West, though. Lakota West Firebirds looked really good this season. They've had a few slip-ups here and there, but they've been really good against Lakota East over the past couple of years, so give me the Firebirds.
I got to do something to make up this gap. I'm 2 games behind, but I'm 1 game behind you. To be honest, I'm going to go Lakota East, purely I know Lakota East is at home in this one. I know that Lakota West has had some solid wins this year, but I need to do something to make up the gap. Give me Lakota East in this one.
All right, guys, last but not least, Hilliard Derby at Marysville.
Oh, this is one that I have to pick, isn't it? Both these teams are really, really, really close. I think recent bias would say probably, give me Marysville in this one. I think Hilliard Derby, they had like a 4 or 5 game slide before they got their win this last week. So give me Marysville in this one.
Give me Marysville. They're home. I think they're the better team.
Yeah, this is a game for me that it's one of those, you flip a coin, whichever team it lands on, you're probably going to end up there's nothing you can really say that's like, yeah, that's a bad pick. So I'm going to go with Marysville in this one. They're at home. They've had, when it comes to head-to-head competitions, I hate using the transitive property for this, but head-to-head matchups against the same teams, Marysville has done better against similar teams that Hilliard-Darby has. So give me the Monarchs of Marysville.
That takes us to the end of the show. Once again, thanks for joining us. The Friday Night Recap Show. We talk to you guys in Week 10.